All right, well, it says we're streaming on YouTube, Mal, but I don't see it just yet. All right, here we go. Here we go. What's going on, everybody? What's going on? We pulled it off. All right, I wasn't sure we were going to go live today. So what I will do is I will say welcome, everybody, to Hash Church 3.0. It is episode 9, and I've already got a few folks in the house. What's going on, Hemp Guy?
I'm trying to figure out why my camera's not on. I'll figure it out.
Well, Soma's figured his out. Hayate Matsuzake.
I got help. I needed help.
Dude, it's so good to see you, man.
Yeah, nice to see you too.
Holy smokes. Right on. Welcome, brother. Welcome. Little Hash Church in the morning. Oh, Debbie's here with the Golden Gate Bridge behind her. How you doing, Debbie?
Good morning. Not bad. How about you?
Or should I say Deborah?
Oh, that's fancy. Is that what it says?
Yeah, it does indeed.
And I have no idea how to change it. Holy cow.
That's okay. We can rock, Deborah. Look at me. I'm Bubble Man Marcus Richardson. So I've got 3 silly names here. So
I put the third behind it or
And I got my Japanese friend's name on
yeah, dude. I love it.
his laptop right now.
Matsuzaki. Well, welcome, Hayate. And welcome, Johnny B.
What's going on, everybody? Morning. Great to see everybody. Oh, great to see you again. What's up, brothers? Hi. Morning, Skunk Man. Morning, Mark. Morning, Deborah. Everybody's.
It's been a while since we've had a hash church. You know, there's been so much going on in the world right now. Oh, and Soma's gonna melt some hash. You know, the first time I saw Soma do that was probably a very, very long time ago.
I think 2001 or 2002.
I'm telling you, dude, because I picture that Jason Lee bubbler that you bought from me in the background as you're doing it.
I have it right near where I am now. I could go
Of course you do. That's awesome. Well, yeah, lots going on in the world. I thought it would be a kind of a good idea to have a little gathering of Hash Church alumni here, maybe some new, maybe some old, and just kind of get together, not with any really particular narrative to discuss or script, but really just, you know, get together with all of you guys, find out what's going on in your neck of the woods with all the, full-blown madness. You know, I want to try and keep it positive, but at the same time, I want to hear exactly what everyone's kind of going through these days in regards to all the madness. There's a lot of madness going out there.
Did you get to check out London and Germany and Berlin?
Oh, I saw that one in London. How many people was that?
Not as many as in Germany.
Really? I didn't see Germany, but I saw London. It looked
Germany, like I just put some pictures up on my Facebook. Like Germany was outrageous, you know?
Wow. Well, I thought the picture of London was pretty outrageous. So Germany really must have been outrageous. It looked like over 100,000 people in London.
And over 1 million in Germany.
Damn. Well, people are out protesting, and here we are just puffing. We got a couple hundred people watching in the room right now.
Puffing is one of the best things you can do.
Straight up, I agree. You know, obviously we're all quite biased, and we've been saying this for a long time. But when you hear mainstream media people, when you hear Dr. Bonnie Henry, who's our health lady here in BC, say, you know, just like, stay at home with friends and smoke some joints. And I was like, excuse me? Did she just say to hang out with friends and smoke joints?
Did she say smoke joints? Really?
Yeah, she was talking about like puffing. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, we're allowed to smoke joints now, so why not, right?
I like that. You know, it's at the point right now that every time I go out and I roll a joint, I got like 4 or 5 in front of me. As soon as when I light up a joint with some friends, I just hand them one now because you just can't share anymore. It's like that puff and pass is roll one for your friend.
You know, it's the Jamaican way, to be honest. The Jamaicans taught me that so many years ago. They were just like, well, why you want to pass your joint around? Like, why don't you just roll your own spliff? And I was like, man, I never even thought of such a thing. And same reason what?
You know why? Because we always want to share something. We're like, here, you light up a joint. First thing you want to do is you want to share it. I mean, like, here, you want to try this?
Sharing's such a big part of it, man.
Well, I think the bigger reason was in America, a joint used to be expensive. Now it's, I mean, in Jamaica, it's cheap. So why share?
I recognize that voice.
Yeah, you do. You recognize that voice. That's the skunk man Sam in the house. Welcome, Colin. Colin Palmer's in the house. And welcome, wow, look at Mark Scaldone. That was a pretty fancy shot you had there, bud.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's what's up.
Hey, Deb, how are you? Good to see you.
Good.
That's what we call the money shot.
For sure.
To not scare the investors out of the room.
The money shot. So how's everybody been doing? Honestly, what's been going on in the world of all of you? You know, what's
I can honestly say that absolutely nothing has changed in my life. I stay at home. I never go see anybody, and everything's exactly the same.
You never go see anybody, so you don't lose any cars.
He was socially isolated before school to be socially isolated.
Soma, you gotta expand on that one, dude. That shit is funny.
not now. In private.
I think Sam's a big enough man to acknowledge that shit happened. I mean, it was classic. It was amazing.
No, it never ever happened to me.
It's just, you know what? It really is the story that sort of leads into oh, what the heck is his name now? Karma Genetics has a cultivar called Where Is My Bike? And everyone's like, what the fuck is that? It's like, it was the Amnesia Haze crossed with that, like a biker kush. And it was like, I think one of the first guys to ever smoke it basically came back and was like, I lost my bike, which is not really the most, like lots of people have lost their bikes in Amsterdam, particularly people who go there, who rent a bike and have never been there. And the place all looks the same. And you park your bike out in front of a little spot. And the next thing you know, you're walking around, you get separated from your bike. That bike's gone. Like you're never, ever going to see that.
Especially if you don't lock it.
Especially if you don't lock it. Exactly. There's no doubt about that. But doing it with a car is like the next level.
I always lock my car.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. No one even got a new car out of it. Well, yeah, you're right. Actually, some Omasita says someone got a new car out of it.
It's true.
You're right. Without even knowing the story, you're right. That's funny. All right. I'm loading up some Lime Pop 87, a little bit of rosin that I squished with Flav the other day.
Anybody else using tons of edibles during this whole COVID thing? That's my thing.
Oh my God. I've been doing edibles almost every other day.
Almost every other day.
Last night I went to the sauna. I went to the sauna and I ate a bunch of edibles. I got in the hot tub. I did a few sweats on the edibles. And I'm not on my phone when I'm in the sauna, and I'm not talking that much. I'm mostly like internalizing, and it was fantastic eating edibles at the sauna. I highly recommend it.
I've been just puffing a lot, not so much eating edibles, mainly because I'm working in the lab 5 days a week, so I can't just get utterly destroyed and still operate multiple lab technicians and multiple modalities of extraction and all highly regulated QA and all this other stuff that you have to sort of deal with. But puffing has certainly been my friend. There's no doubt about that.
Well, that's probably why, because do you guys hear my shop got looted and robbed and closed?
Oh, yeah.
And
Horrible.
What a drag.
I actually see it in your face. I see that.
It's just
I
terrible.
see that disappointment in your face. And usually I never see that in your face. Your face is like optimistic, like, you know, inspiring, and it still is, but I see this. Now I know that look I saw in your face. You know?
Got so beat
I knew
up.
about it, but I forgot about that happened to you, and that sucks.
That's what happens. We're still closed. So yeah, maybe that's why I'm eating the edibles, right? You just got to like shut down that thought process that happens, you know, when something really bad like that, a little the trauma, been dealing with trauma from it, you know.
Yeah,
It was bad, you guys. All 10 dispensaries in Oakland got targeted by looters and robbers, like every one of us. And, the majority of us lost everything. We lost everything. Our security cameras, our doors, our windows, all of our weed, all of our money, all of our equipment. So, I mean, because the Oakland Police Department, I don't blame the robbers per se. I blame societal issues, of course, being so bad, but also Oakland Police Department didn't help us at all. They actually left our place unguarded for 8 hours. What the hell? These guys were able to get 1,000-pound safe out of there in that course of that 8 hours. So
that's some bullshit for sure. I remember back in the day when someone drove a car through the front of the Compassion Club, which would actually later end up leading to me getting busted with Compassion Club cannabis because they didn't want to keep it at the facility because they were getting robbed. Well, these guys drive a car through right through the window. This is in the 90s, late 90s. They get this, the safe had to be close to 1,000 pounds as well. It was ridiculous how far they moved it, scraped up the floor, bent the door so it was just somehow cracked the tiniest bit. Well, it had like 35 pounds of Renee in the safe. So this little crack was like, you might as well have had 1,000 light grow in full bloom inside that safe. It stunk so bad. The cops showed up and Hillary was certain like, oh, this is not going to go well. And they guarded that safe for like hours, just standing next to the safe, not doing much. It's not like they were standing there with their guns out. They just were a presence. And I mean, how hard is that for the police department to be doing? I mean, in my opinion, that would be probably one of the safest places to be. Just go hang out next to this safe. You know, you got your cop car there. No one's going to come and bother you. I'm really sorry that happened to you and all the rest of
me and everyone. Millions and millions of dollars. Some of my friends lost $2 million, like above, you know, like millions of dollars in their facilities. But after that, the police felt so bad they have stepped up a little bit, at least to be preventative. And one of the weirder conversations I've ever had with the police, which I've had a lot at this point, but yeah, the captain of the police department's like, how about next time we'll guard it? Just bring it all down to the police department. And we'll sort it at the police department during the civil unrest. And then people are like, oh my God, is this really happening? The police tell me to bring my weed down, so they'll put it, they'll guard it.
I thought the police always said crime doesn't pay.
Yeah, that's their motto. That's why people don't trust them. It's like, man, like even your motto's way off. Like, it's terrible.
Sam, I know you're not going to smoke a spliff.
Well, you better smoke one. Sam, when's the last time you smoked a spliff, Sam?
The last time I had either women or slaves at my house.
He went there. Only Sam. You have to know the context of that without thinking Sam's a total douche right now, and I can promise you he's not. But that was borderline over the top. I haven't smoked a joint in 19 years. Myself.
You haven't?
No.
Oh.
I know.
I smoked a joint last night.
Nice.
Wedding cake mac. It was delicious, actually.
Yeah, really I wish I could. I don't know why I can't. I think you know,
it has to be great weed.
Yeah, it has to be great weed for sure. But something happened, Soma, after I got turned on to bubble, and I was making bubble in 99, and I was getting Renee, and it was so flavorful. It almost blasted out my nose and my taste buds with this Renee profile. And for 2.5 years, I smoked that shit chronic every day. And then someone was like, hey, like, this is it was a super nice joint in Jamaica of like lamb's bread. And they're like, you got to smoke this. It's so nice. And I was like, all right. And I just took a little puff of it, and it just tasted like an ashtray. It was just like, it was wet on the end, and it was like, I don't know. I was like, I've ruined joints for myself, which was really actually quite a sad day. I wasn't stoked about it at all. It was like I couldn't get back to the perspective because I, like many of you, absolutely loved joints. Like I would look at it the way Soma's looking at his.
Yeah,
like,
53 years of doing this.
Yeah, exactly, dude. And I was only like 20 something odd or 15 years in or something, you know, like I wasn't 50. So I get it. I wish I could go back and enjoy it, but I can't.
I wish
Well,
there was
perhaps some of
commercial
these,
access. I wish we could get that fine bubble hash that's so pure on the commercial market, but it's nowhere. You know, you can't get that stuff.
I'm
At least
trying,
try
Deb.
it.
I know Marcus is trying to.
Hell yeah.
It's a
We're
lot
gonna
of
get it
work.
there. But I
It's a
think
lot of
some of the
work.
newer varieties are really tasty, Marcus. And I would say that some of the newer stuff I've been smoking on these really expansive polyhybrids that have just been super worked. I mean, the terpene profiles on some of them are really exorbitant.
I love them. I love
Yeah,
them
super cool.
in pure form,
Yeah.
diluted on plant matter and wrapped in paper and glue. Not so much.
I'm with you on that. But last night was interesting. I as you know, I'm not huge on joints at all, and I mean, I didn't smoke the whole thing, but like, you know, definitely got in on it. So what's everybody smoking on today? What do you guys, Summer, what are you smoking on out in Amsterdam, brother?
Well, this is like 5 different kinds. I always call it Soma salad because almost every time, unless I'm testing something out, I'm always making a mix because that's my favorite kind of spliff. Is a mix.
Nice, man. Is there
I like
anything new
that.
that you're working on that you're really enjoying lately? Like
Say
new
that again?
varieties or something that you
Yeah, I got this
nice.
amazing Labnesia going. It's half lavender, half amnesia, and it's
Nice.
Damn.
the terpenes are very unique.
I was gonna say funky. They must be super funky.
Yeah.
And nice growth patterns, you know.
Wow.
Big stalk, like giant.
I did to check that out.
I like the sounds of that, dude. You picked 2 pretty darn good ones. I mean, listen,
It's really nice.
I love that Haze, that narrow leaf drug cultivar terpene profile that is just, you know, in North America, we call it exotic. It's those exotic flavors.
Especially when it's the Southeast Asian one, it's super exotic.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I mean, shit. I remember you breaking up that 26-week sativa at, I think David's from Ripper Seeds. We were making hash there. And you were in the back room in Barcelona.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, that was, it's funny because there's a video of that on my channel. All these different stories often that I talk about, I'll be like, whoa, there's actually a video of that on this YouTube channel. It's pretty trippy. Have the video of the experience. 26-week Haze was the longest I'd ever heard flowering. I used to grow one back in the day that was about 16 weeks that we thought was long.
Yeah,
you know?
Even that's long these days.
It's long, but that 26-weeker that you had was ridiculous. That should be available too.
I had one that went till under natural photo period in Central Coast, California. It went until April the 1st, and I called it April Fool's Haze. And it was planted, you know, like in September or something like that, but it just took forever to flower.
Damn.
That's insane.
Well, I got a plant that I'm running right now, so I'm in like week 6 of flower, and it's just starting to get buds. I'm like, fuck, this thing's gonna go probably that 16 weeks because it is a cross. Colombian, 24-week sativa Colombian with Grosco cookies, and it's just like you can tell it's like, oh, it's gonna go that long.
And
So it'd be nice to look at.
What photo period do you put it on, Johnny?
Right now I'm on 11 and a half hours a day because I'm trying to match my PPFD to get the right moles a day. So I'm at 30 moles a day at 756 PPFD at my canopy. But I had a major pH problem. I was feeding at 4.5, so I'm trying to recover from that if I can for like 2 weeks. Never
Your
seen
pH was that low for 2 weeks?
Yeah, I thought it was light stress in the beginning, and it was light stress because I was hitting them at like 1500 ppfd, 1256 to 1500 at 18 hours a day. So when I went into flower, things changed. I started seeing light stress, and then through that, my meter started failing. That went into ppm to a nutrient lockout to, well, these sativas now they're recovering. The other ones probably won't, but I'm actually being able to see these longer flowering plants. Hopefully we'll recover from them and they'll be able to see what I get from them. But the photo period right now, what do you think, Sam? 11.5 hours at, like I said, I'm at 750 ppfd at the top of the canopy. So that gives me 30 moles a day, I think.
And yeah, I would just, because you can usually speed up flowering or shorten flowering, depending on what you want to call it, by not doing 12-12, but doing 11 hours of light a day, but whatever.
I'm also introducing the far red, so the plants feel like they're in the shade. So hopefully that might.
12, but doing.
I liked how Johnny B went deep on that answer. Like how much were you expecting Johnny B to answer like that, Skunk Man Sam?
That's fine with me. I mean, Johnny B tries to be Mr. Science, and
he did a pretty good job on that light answer. I'm just gonna give him a little high five there.
He's pontificating, and what he knows about.
Well, I like that about Johnny B, that he goes deep and he's like, he gets into shit and he's like, hey, I'm learning. He never tries to act like he's the big expert, but he's like, he's got great information and he's learning it. And he's here to share it with us. So fucking thanks, Johnny B.
I really want to share it with people. And that pH low 4.5, like really showing people, because it looked like it was nutrient burn. And I thought it was a nitrogen burn. And then I thought it was light stress. And there were so many, and I'm testing my meters like crazy. I actually went to Blue Lab, and then one guy I brought in, he goes, your meter's 8 years old, dude. He goes, you're only good for 2 years. Your meter's dead. I'm like, well, why doesn't stuff last forever these days? But that was a huge lesson for me. It was really, I have three, not double, triple checking my calibrations and actually not comparing it with another pen. So having two is now, I'll always have a second pen to double check with things because I relied on one meter for so long.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, your transparency, and your courage in a time when so many people are so afraid to show any vulnerability or weakness on social media. Here you are just blasting it out to the world. Oh, I fucking got bugs. Oh, I fucked up my plants. I did this. And what you're doing is you're making the mistakes that they're all afraid to either talk about or share or show. And you're doing it in a way that are allowing people to be like, oh shit, maybe that's what happened to my plants, because the internet is horrendous. It's like, you go on there and all of a sudden you're under full attack. Like if it wasn't you posting that picture and it was anyone else, they would just be like fully destroyed on social media. Look at this noob. Like people are not as willing to help. So I do really appreciate your ability to share your mistakes with everyone and get past them and show how you can continue to grow healthy plants. It's pretty cool, man.
You know what? It's the plant that always teaches me to grow forward. And it's showing me, like I had that amazing canopy, the room was doing so well and I was so proud of it. And it's just like, kind of like at any second that's how quick you can lose a crop. And people really, I've never had this problem before and it went through everything. So it's good to be able to share with people. At the same time, people are teaching me so much. So as I'm sharing, I'm learning so much coming back because now everybody's like, oh, try this. Hey, your pH got to be 6.6. The lights are more like Ferraris. You're going to have to tune up your engine. You're going to need to add a little bit more of this and change there's a few different things that I'm learning going into this new phase of the next level growing with VPD, with LEDs, with looking at those canopies, looking at the PPFD, look at the amount of moles the plants are getting a day, and really dialing that in. Like right now, I'm learning that with LEDs, like I can come in at the end, the last couple of weeks of my flowering, add a far red. The plants feel like they're in the shade. They're going to actually just elongate more and get bigger buds. And that's just the research that's coming out of Appleby Technologies, which is Bruce Grimsby and this is all NASA research right now. So it's pretty cool to see how the direction with LED growing, because I've been growing with LEDs for so long, to see its next step in the future of growing. And I always say this green rush right now is LED lights for cannabis. That is the biggest green rush right now for the industry is LED lights, because there's so many lights on the market now. Before you just go and buy an HPS bulb or a dual land Gavita, there's so many LED lights on the market, guys. Now it's overwhelming. What light to choose, what light not to choose, which ones work for what applications. We got ones for veg, ones for flower, ones for late flower. Like, it's pretty cool to see how we're able to dial this in now. And I've been down the rabbit hole huge, learning about PPF, the photosynthetic flux density, and the amount of photons that are leaving the light source, and the amount that are actually hitting the leaf. And there's just so much more to know, and it's pretty cool. You know, I always love sharing this with you guys, because I kind of want you guys to share back. So hit me up and let's talk about growing. You know what I mean? That's what I love so much. Bong rip. I have to say, dabs away.
Bong rip, indeed. That was awesome, dude. I'm always stoked. I was stoked when you got into the active water. That was unique and different. Not a lot of people were doing it, and of course, tons of people are light experts and whatnot. But you're honest and trustworthy. I think that's like your how you differ from a lot of these different people. You're actually trustworthy. You're not out to direct people in the wrong way. So cheers, Johnny B, and cheers everyone else on the panel right now. I really appreciate you all showing up here today for a little hash church, something we haven't really done in a long time.
Hey, me and Colin have a project we're working on together after meeting on hash church. Because, well, you guys know that Magnolia has a dab bar. So, and there I was dabbing probably last time I was on Hash Church, and COVID was just heating up, and I'm looking at the rig going, and I think we even talked about it. How do we clean those things so that we can use them in a public space, and I could use it and then it could be cleaned and somebody else can use it? Like, how do you actually flip the glassware in a commercial cannabis setting in a dab bar? So when we had our panel discussion here, everyone was like, I don't know, we couldn't really come up with it. So me and Colin formed a little committee and have been working for a couple months now. So I don't know, Colin, do you want to tell them about the SOPs at all? Because Colin developed the SOPs, and now we need some other people to peer review. We need to do peer review.
Yeah, so it's been super fun. We just kind of been meeting once a week after hours, just chatting about the need for clean utensils in a social setting that could be used time and time again, and how those things are turned over, and what that means in terms of disinfecting things, and how to keep that really clean for the user, so they feel safe and they feel like it's a place that they can go to really use their medicine. So we've just we put together some guidelines and kind of an overview that we're working through right now, and I think we'd like to pass it around to other people on the panel, or just other people in our community, to get feedback, so we can develop this to set policy, so we can help shape that moving forward post-COVID, and how people could use that to inform their businesses and allow them to all operate, essentially, because it's going to be a tough thing to understand. And I think if we can just have dialogue now, it won't be as tough, and we can all use the information together. So that's kind of where we're at. I mean, when you say, I think we've got a good framework together, and I think we have we've got a good set of people that are on the panel right now. But I think as Deb was saying, I think we'd love to have everybody's thoughts and ideas kind of circulate into this document. It'd be great.
Yeah, because it's actually multi-step, right? You got to start with the clean surface to clean it. Then you got to clean the goop off of it. Then you got to sanitize it. Then you got to disinfect it. And, then you got to keep it safe in between use. And our hope is to, post-COVID, not have the government come and say, you can't do that, everyone's going to get COVID. And then we can just step in and be like, well, we took months, we did a big survey, we came up with these ideas, we peer reviewed them through a bunch of scientists and experts, and you don't need to worry. So it's been pretty fun.
That's amazing. That's really cool, guys. I want to take this chance to welcome Josh and Kelly, who I saw just come into the room a little bit ago. Dragonfly Earth Medicine in the house. Also wanted to welcome Valerie Corral, who's in the house. I see her picture up. And Peter from Soil Balance Pro is back to visit with us. So welcome all of you guys to Hash Church today here on Sunday morning, at least where I am.
Good
Yeah.
morning.
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation. So,
Oh, absolutely, Valerie. It was so good to hear you speak the last time you were on with Josh and Kelly. They were doing the DEM Pure series, and you ended up on there, I believe, and it was really amazing. I even learned some new stuff about you. I just thought you spoke so authentic and so from the heart, and it was totally like hair standing up on my arms the whole time and on the back of my neck. I was like, damn, like I remember how amazing you were, but then I was reminded by how amazing you are. So yeah, really welcome.
well,
And
yeah,
did you
thanks so
have any
much. I mean,
problems?
pretty inspired group here, right? And it's
Did
easy
you have
to
any
do that.
problems?
Being
Did you-
with damn pure is pretty damn pure. I mean, it's pretty sweet. So yeah, we had a really nice communication with all the communications leading up to that. There's a ton of work that's going into this process. I really appreciate that, Josh and Kelly, and just the immensity of really that everyone's doing right now, because we're trying to rise up, so to speak, with the limitations that we are all facing and the challenges, and still with the deep connection to one another. So it makes it a great opportunity, but a bit challenging. So yeah, so I just really appreciate these opportunities to chat with my comrades and inspired folks here. So thank you.
And Valerie, did the fires bring any problems to your collective?
No, well, we thought that our North County fire burned from the mapping, but it turns out that third fire in Santa Cruz in the last almost 50 years, and it did not burn. We got in, sneaking in, and you have to do it, get around those plants need water, so it's really scorched and hot, but there's safe passage, safe road in behind, through properties. Yeah. So it's, it's good fortune. Just again, it's tragedy if you're in the way, but nature does this. And, I was reading that quote by Dr. Martin Luther King, that's riots are the protests of the unheard. And this is what we have it in the streets, and we're hearing nature's riot, and we haven't listened so well. I mean, we just all have to put our ears to the ground and to each other's heart and try to more deeply listen to the greater needs that are surrounding us, because the world's in a riot, and our people are too, because we haven't heard and haven't listened. And it's getting louder and hotter. And yeah, so, but I was just thinking, even 1,000 strikes and COVID's like this nature's little bioterrorism, and fires and hurricanes and tornadoes, and it's nature, but it is profound and impactful. And I'm getting ready to host some people again that are displaced. A lot of people in this vicinity right now are in deep trouble. And I know that many of you have been faced with this as well, with this problem, with facing these issues as well in your communities. So yeah, we're going to host some folks here, and it'll be nice to have some new, safe, protected, COVID protected folks in the house. It's a crazy time, a time that we have to reimagine how to deeply connect. I mean, we can deeply connect, but it's interesting, right? We walk around with masks on and try to see each other's. I've just gotten to saying hello to people, because it's hard to tell if someone's smiling or not. And I think that we want to connect, we really do, but it's not that simple process. So anyway, thanks. I digress here, but thanks for asking.
Big love and respect to you on that, and on that note. And that's the big energy that's been going into everyone's farm this year, I think, is just to bring that self-reliance and just that to bring that stability through your own work and through your own community, and realizing that you're as strong as your community that's around you and stuff. So big shout and a big love to Brett from Dos Perros there in Santa Cruz, who did lose his home, and Cruz Extracts. Few farms, you know, that did lose their farms. There's ways you can reach out to them and help them. But yeah, it's been pretty hectic.
And I love it, you know, like Valerie, you just said, you know, people hit the streets, people are hitting the streets. And I think that that's just such an amazing term for, you know, communing with our community. When we say hit the streets, and when we say that we're out protesting, we're with community, we're with our people. And I think that that's more important than ever, that we reach out to community right now, that even though we might be behind masks, we have this incredible ability to reach out to community and connect almost on a deeper level. So, you know, even though it's through screens and we can't touch and we are isolated physically, we're able to go deeper than I know that we've ever gone before. And the work that's getting done through community and through connection is astounding right now in this industry. And I just have so much love and appreciation for all of these amazing people that are connected to this master plant, doing the good work for the whole, all of humanity. So thank you, Valerie, for your work, and everybody else here on this panel,
and Deborah
doing amazing
and Colin
work.
and everything that you were doing at the dispensary. Big love to everyone. I saw Soma, haven't seen him in a while. Yeah.
Big love. Thanks for having us today, Marcus.
Yeah.
So much heart.
Totally welcome. It's great to see and hear you guys. It's always a pleasure. And Peter, how about yourself, bud? How have you been?
Yeah, well, I'm super grateful to be here with all you guys. Thank you so much for having me. Been doing a lot of work in the last couple of years since I've been on Hash Church. It's been a while, I think, or maybe a year since the last time, around there.
Yeah, it seems like it's been forever since I even did one. So, I mean, even in this 3.0 series, there's only been 9 of them. It's been...
Yeah, so been doing a lot of hemp consulting lately. So we consulted for 160 different hemp farmers in 2019, which was a journey, man. We kind of went into large scale industrial agriculture, and we tried to help a lot of these guys transition or learn how to grow organically. So chemical farmers that had been historically, you know, accustomed to pushing a button to, you know, take care of their problems, were now coming into this whole new world of growing and being in integrity and in a different consciousness with nature. So it was unbelievable to see, you know, how a human being could actually get reconnected to nature through the experience of this plant. So guys that had been traditional chemical farmers to actually be like, wow, maybe this is the gateway to a whole nother energy or world that can teach me how to become more integrated with nature. So I got to experience that firsthand with hundreds of farmers. So it was amazing.
That's incredible, dude.
See, yeah, it was a beautiful, beautiful thing. So to see, you know, some of the things that are happening now, the relativity of what had happened, you know, in my experience and watching these farmers, is almost like, it's like an education that maybe right now what we need to do is all as a community, like Dragonfly was saying, is kind of come together in a more integrated, interdependent way, where we're understanding that taking care of our earth right now, for her, she's crying out to us, you know, is so important to solve a lot of these issues from the ground up. And so that's what we're doing with soil balance, is trying to take care of the soil, because the more we care for our earth in a considerate, compassionate way, relatively speaking, everything should get a lot, you know, more balanced.
Well, I love the
it's more balanced in the beginning.
I love the idea of chemical farmers transitioning into a more sustainable, regenerative, organic way, and having revelations about it. That's pretty cool right there.
It was far out, man. It was.
I had not heard of the term chemical farmer before. In a way, being a chemist, that kind of excites me, right? But
conventional
is a chemical farmer just a non-organic farmer? Is that what you're defining?
Yeah, the guys that are using systemic fungicides and biocides and synthetic ferts. Yeah, basically.
So a conventional farmer.
A conventional, yeah.
Yeah, conventional.
What a nice word they gave themselves, though, eh? They're
yeah, chemical farming, like they could actually grow and make chemicals. It's just,
everything's a chemical.
What the plant is doing, it making phytochemicals. I mean,
yep.
Let's not, distinguish between.
Well, we do distinguish between a little bit, because phyto in front of chemical kind of changes the definition of that particular chemical, at least in regards to where it came from. Mm-hmm. And so then that gives people their belief systems, right? They're like, well, I trust nature, but I don't trust DuPont.
And Peter, you said you consulted for a couple hundred businesses. How many of them grew a crop in 2020? In other words, how many of them in 2019 actually made a profit on growing hemp?
That's a great question. So we consulted for 160 pretty large scale operations. Right now, 95% of our customers are not growing hemp again this season. And they're sitting on millions of pounds of biomass that they can't sell. And, I've thought a lot about why that is. And one of the things that I believe is that, they spent so much time with the logistics of cultivating that they didn't put enough focus on, good cultivation methodologies and practices in taking care of their soil. And so the terpene levels inside the finished commodity were like 0.1, 0.2% terpenes. So then what they were doing is they were taking that oil, they were actually processing it, on an industrial scale with ethanol and CO2. And what was happening is those processing methods were burning out that very small amount of terpene content that was inside of the flower. So what ended up happening was, people were started to sell this full spectrum organic CBD isolate, really, because it didn't have the most important compounds to the efficacy, of the plant, as we all know.
Full spectrum isolate, that caught my ear as well.
I heard that too.
Distillate.
I heard that too.
It would have to be distillate. And it wouldn't be full spectrum because distillate isn't full spectrum.
Well, here's the thing, the CBD, right. The CBD was going into these tinctures and vape pens and edibles and topicals. People were using CBD and they were disenchanted. So they're like, I'm spending $60 on this CBD tincture and I don't feel anything. Am I supposed to feel something? And so what ended up happening was, my opinion was that those terpenes were not in that finished product that was being put out to the market on a large scale. And so the absorption rates in the industry were really low because it didn't work. It was working. It was working. I mean, they were getting effect. If
the tincture is made with an extract where the terpenes are retained, then they're going to have all the plantiness and probably plant pigments going to taste like. But if it's just made with isolate or even distillate.
Oh, Mark, you got muted.
Well, a distillate with no terpenes, right? So again, the flower has 0.1% terpenes in it. The CO2 and the ethanol goes into an extreme heat, as you guys know as processors. It burns out the small amount of terpenes that are in there. And if you look at the profiles of the treated flower, there was only maybe 5 or 6 types of terpenes in the profile. Versus like what you guys are getting is like 20 types of terpenes, or what Dragonfly gets. They get a broad spectrum because they've got that biodiversity in there. So you're already starting out with a disadvantage, then you're burning them out. And so, again, it was advertised as this amazing product that's going to heal. People started taking it and they didn't really feel much. And so they didn't want to spend $60 again. on a tincture.
What about the idea of these farmers who were conventional farmers? I'm guessing their land was, very contaminated with synthetic chemicals.
Right.
And then they're planting a phytoremediative plant like hemp. I wonder what that plant would be pulling up into this, into
Right.
its very being, like right into its cells, right into the resin, right into all of those things. Because that would be that's always my kind of worry. And
Well, most of those chemicals degrade, though, and they degrade, and when they do, they're mostly degraded by like light and heat, but also mostly degraded by bugs, by microbes. I mean, a lot of those, they're just organic compounds, and they're degraded in the soil. So there's not really too many persistent compounds that are used.
Well, there's a few, and I know the tobacco industry has one called Radium 226, because it's how Joe Strobel, one of the first hemp farmers in Canada, learned that hemp was a phytoremediative plant, because people weren't really talking about it, at least in the small circles we knew of back then. But this tobacco farmer, Joe Strobel, who got the first license to grow hemp in Canada in over like 75 years, 1994 in Ontario, he was a tobacco farmer, and Jeff Kime was his partner, was a lawyer. They got it done. They planted this 5-acre experimental field. And I guess because of this chemical, this radioactive nucleotide that basically gets put into the soil, they have to like test the soil every year. And at the end of the hemp crop, they tested it, and it was shockingly low, lower than they'd ever seen it go down by like some ridiculous amount. I don't know what it was, but 5 or 10 times. And so then they had to test the hemp to figure out what was going on. And that was actually, that was the information that came to our group that started that phytoremediative project in Chernobyl, growing hemp to remove radioactive nucleotides out of the soil, because it definitely does that.
It does, and it pulls out heavy metals. It can pull out all kinds of different, locked up chlorinated hydrocarbons that are insolubilized in the soil. So one of the things that we really tried to do was cultivate the hemp in a highly biologically active system where, the biology on thousands of acres was dead. It was destroyed because of, how the compounds in a lot of these materials actually burns out the biology. So what we had to do, because just to digress a little bit, what good biology will do is it will actually grow on the rhizosphere, and it will kind of mediate some of the absorption rates of toxins that go into the plant, believe it or not. It's a beautiful natural thing, and the correct biology can actually attach to those hydrocarbons, solubilize them, and help them leach out of the soil by increasing the bulk density of the soil and the porosity. So that way, when water comes in, a lot of those toxins are leached out and purified. But that isn't the case in a lot of these large scale operations. So we had to really, do some preliminary testing. We couldn't plant like in areas where they were doing cotton because of glyphosate drift. I mean, there were so many different challenges that what we faced, and it's been a battle, man. It's been like 14-hour days working with these guys and trying to help them. Really, I mean, that's the whole focus. And right now, it's unfortunate that a lot of these farmers are not able, good people, kind, beautiful people that want to grow this plant. They believe in this plant. They believe it's going to help so much, and they're having a hard time on top of all the other.
So here's a question kind of to Mark, Dr. Mark, as well as to Dragonfly Earth Medicine, because I hear Mark saying, well, those are, he used the term chemical wrong, and I could see that get under your skin as a chemist. Sorry. And that's okay. That's okay. Don't worry about it. It's all good fun.
Chemicals, man.
We're all chemicals. It's true. But at the same time, don't you believe, Mark, Dr. Mark, that some of the chemicals that are being put on the scale, on large scale, are destroying the soil? Or do you really believe
Absolutely.
they're just... Yeah, they must
Absolutely.
be, right?
They're not destroying the soil, but what they're doing is they're altering
the life of the soil.
Right. They're all, and so it's kind of like Mother Nature's biome will kind of adapt to this new synthetic chemical that Dow or DuPont or whoever's making and spraying. But like one of the things that I noticed, I mean, it's really interesting to hear you say all that, Peter, because the folks around here, where I live in Pennsylvania, most of the Amish are also tobacco farmers, and so they understand growing a crop for essentially essential oil or for to be sold for smoking purposes. So they're able to basically grow to the volume at which they can dry, and so they all have these tobacco barns. They're really cool looking barns. They're the sides of the barn open like wings, right? Because it could air out. The air has to exchange, and so the tobacco gets picked right around the time that hemp gets picked. It actually gets picked just prior to that, gets hung up in these barns. And I tell you, man, when you walk up to the edge of these barns, I'm not a cigarette smoker. I don't use tobacco in any form. When you walk up next to these barns, man, that air is intoxicating. It is really, for a non-cigarette smoker, it's like, whoa, you just, woo, kind of like blown away by it. But anyway, the first year that they really grew widespread around here, most of these farms are on the order of about 10. Some of them are more like around 40 to 60 to 80 acres. And a lot of them grow feed corn for the dairy industry. That's pretty big in my area of Pennsylvania. But again, they're also growing tobacco, and where they grew tobacco, they have a whole system where they have these carts that go out and they hang tobacco leaves on the cart, and they bring, well, they didn't have all that worked out for hemp, so they needed to figure that out. So last year was kind of like a training wheels years. You know, a lot of them, they didn't dry right away. Some of them had issues with bugs, and some of them had issues with, some people brought dryers into the area and were able to dry hemp. But for the most part, I think they had a pretty successful crop when they compare it to the return on value that they can get compared to another crop. So a lot of these folks are growing ornamentals, you know, for the flower markets, and they're growing vegetables like tomatoes and melons, cantaloupes, watermelons, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it is a different kind of agriculture. But to speak to your organic thing, I think a lot of these folks grow organically, and what they're doing is they're bolting on the organic certification onto their existing organic certification. So if you already have an organic farm and they've already been come out to certify it to make sure that your processes and really everything that touches the crop is organic and chemical free, although they do list a list of chemicals that you could use in an organic thing. They're just organic chemicals, but
organic chemicals.
You know, just to finally divide it. I mean, everything is organic chemical, unless we're importing feedstocks from Mars. Everything comes from planet Earth. So, where was I going with? Oh, so
that's not true. I've been to Soma's house and I seen some shit that was absolutely not from planet Earth.
Ayahuasca, come on now.
Bringing in some stuff from Saturn, Stardust, right? But I think for the most part, I would say that what really stalled was sort of like the FDA in making an exception and the FD&C rule so they could include CBD in things like topicals and foods and stuff like that. And so what that did is it created this huge glut of biomass that's on the market. And what that did is it made, so about a year ago, the price of isolate from large manufacturers in like Portland and Denver area that were processing lots of hemp, price of isolate was on the order of about 5,000 to maybe 7,000 a kilo. And that's for multiple kilograms. And they want to look for, you know, big contracts so they could set up some big supply chains. Well, now the bottom has just crashed on that market. You can get those same kilograms now for less than $1,000 a kilogram. So there's such a supply, but there's no real pull through in the retail. You say that, and then you go on the internet and you find all of these companies selling everything from gummies to lotions to all this stuff that, you know, is as you know, Peter was saying, is derived from hemp. So a lot of folks are putting, you know, either isolate. There's this whole category now of tea-free distillate. So in order for it to be Farm Bill legal, it has to have a THC content of below 0.3%. So there's a whole new industry.
How about the new amendment? that the
I'm sorry?
DEA just, how about the new amendment the DEA just made to the definition of hemp?
Right.
And,
Well, so what they're trying to do with that, Marcus, is they're trying to harmonize the Controlled Dangerous Substance Act with the Farm Bill. So the Farm Bill basically says if it's below 0.3% THC, it's hemp. Therefore, it's legal by the Farm Bill. Well, we all know that even if you purify the oil, or even if you shuck the buds from a 0.3% plant, you're going to purify it beyond that 0.3. Certainly when you make a crude extract or a distillate or an isolate, well, not the isolate, but the distillate, you're going to concentrate the THC. And so I don't think they truly fundamentally understood that when they passed the Farm Bill. And so what that's come up with now is again, there's a whole new group of processors that are basically offering what's called tea-free remediation, or distillate remediation, where they'll take the distillate that's got a THC higher.
It won't matter though, because the way that amendment sits is that the second your product becomes over 0.3%, it's now a Schedule 1 substance.
Yeah, you're right.
And so in your workflow, you're now breaking a Schedule 1 law.
Right.
And so no one's going to be like, that's a major blow.
What they tried to do is classify something called work in progress hemp extract. And so the work in progress hemp extract, so everything between the biomass and the diluted tincture itself is all, Schedule 1. But they wanted to basically say, look, if that's in a process where it's not, being sold or not crossing state lines, then it's okay. But it has created a lot of upset in the industry. And the other thing that people were doing, Marcus, we kind of talked a little bit about this on the chat, is a lot of people, because of the price of CBD is down, they're converting THC over into Delta 8 THC by Mishulam's chemistry. Thank you, Professor Mishulam, for pointing out that you can just treat CBD under acidic conditions. And in fact, I think when people were making CBD distillate and they were adding bleaching clays to the CBD distillate, when they were distilling, they were observing THC over in the product. And I think it's because the clays themselves are acidic in nature and are acidic enough to promote the isomerization from CBD over to THC. But you get Delta 8 THC almost predominantly, but you do get a little bit of Delta 9. And that's one of the issues with the Delta 8 supply now. And you see Delta 8 all over the place. Most of that Delta 8 has beyond 0.3% Delta 9, which is part of what is problematic about that DEA interim final ruling. That's what they call it. Interim final
ruling. Did you see the second part of it?
Well, I know that they're asking for public comment. So
well, before public comment, in the definition change, they also made another change, which was for any companies that had FDA, whatever the term is, compliancy or approved or whatever, which I think one company in the world has. They no longer have to apply for import or export licenses to move their product over the border. So that's the part that left an even worse taste in my mouth about the whole thing. When I saw that, I was like, oh man, they are like lining up the chessboard.
Yeah. Mark, you kind of brought something up that I've been thinking a lot about. I work with a 2,600 acre farm in upstate New York that is fully regenerative, certified organic. And they grow 30 acres of hemp on rotation up there. And, last season, we've been asked specifically for tea-free. I mean, this whole year, it's just been tea-free. Do you have tea-free? But then as I look at the barns and I look at the totes, I question, like, what's enough? And how do we all balance the amount that we grow versus what someone else grows so there is harmony and everyone does have a place? And then it goes back to the idea of appellation and the terroir that we've all been talking about specific regions only working with specific cultivars. you know, what are your thoughts on what's enough, guys? Like I think about this often, you know, because we've learned to scale, but you know, what's the right amount to scale to, you know?
So I think my thoughts are that dragonfly earth medicine and permaculture and some of the growers that I'm talking to with what they're doing, like if we actually have, again, a deeper connection and respect and do things in integrity with our planet, then a permaculture setting is actually going to produce the correct amount of food that we can sustain our populations on. I mean, they've already figured it out.
True enough. True enough. Oh, you're muted, Colin.
Planet's intelligence is just so you know, perfect. It's a sacred vessel that we just have to, you know, allow to produce the amount of tomatoes and corn and cabbage and wheat and soy that we need to eat, and it'll show us what we're supposed to have, you know, what we're supposed to receive from it. The way that I kind of see it.
And
okay,
as
I'm gonna speak in an
the...
analogy for a second. I'm gonna speak with an analogy, and I've done this before, right? So I always used to say that, you know, THC is the deep end, CBD is the shallow end, and the two ends of the pool are connected together, right? And so Mother Nature didn't make an exclusion. But the analogy I'd like to use for the tea-free thing is purple paint, right? So what's purple paint made of? It's made of red paint and blue paint, right? So, well, in the political year, we'll call CBD blue and we'll call THC red, okay? So, and you have to separate the red from the blue paint. Yeah, you can do it by chromatography, but you get a big fraction in the middle where you get a lot of THC and CBD you have to bring right back through in your chromatography. So chromatography is just not, it's an ugly process. It doesn't scale well. You have to use a shitload of solvent. It's expensive. It just, the whole need to make a tea-free product is just completely just ludicrous, all based on, they didn't figure, well, if the plant's got 0.3, gee, when they concentrate it, it's going to be more, you know, concentrated. As long as it's back down to the 0.3 in the final product, that only puts it in tinctures and lotions and stuff like that. Okay, so you can't dab it, whatever. At least they should be able to make it harmonize in that way. So the work in progress hemp extract has got to be something that they got to let hemp processors be able to handle, right? Because if you're bringing in 0.3 into the building, as soon as you concentrate it, as soon as you grind it, as soon as you make an extract out of it, it's over 0.3. So the whole point of the industry is to be able to extract and use the plant that the Farm Bill has already said is legal.
Well, then they let that happen. They let that happen right to the point where the industry almost destroyed itself, and there's no value in the product now.
Well, and Marcus, what that tells you is how bright the intellectual furnaces are that are burning down in DC these days, right? I mean, so
well, and I apologize to jump in, but Valerie, could you actually speak on a little bit of your experience on the efficacy of like natural, like the actual extract kind of ratios of the plant versus this whole kind of conversation around tea-free or separating Delta-9 so it's just isolated pure CBD?
Right. Well, yeah. Thanks, Alec. I think there are a few things here. Well, many things on the table, but as we look at the overproduction of CBD and we ask ourselves, well, how did that even happen? It's obvious that it's the marketing behind it. It's the trending. It's what information came out and was hyped. And, it's a little bit like, the conspiracy of CBD, it's the QAnon, really what happened here. It's not even really true. I mean, what occurs or may be found in some titrations and in some instances is not true across the board. And of course, every single being is unique. And my findings, now this is, it's limited, right? It's not, it's anecdotal, but I work with people. So that's quite a good cross-section. And I find that without the THC, the tea-free is essentially, for the people with whom I've worked, essentially ineffective. Not to say that there is no benefit for some people, there is, but I would say it's very few. It is very few, at least in our the cross section of our membership. And I think the imbalance here is, as the market as laws are written to take over the market or control the market, a marketplace, no matter what market that is, the danger is in the hype or the trending that surrounds that product. And so, I mean, there's an overproduction of hemp. If we look at the reasons are many. And one is because, perfectly good farmers needed to grow something to be able to live on, to gain enough revenue. But really, CBD, CBD is not really the answer. I'm not saying that it is not part of an answer, but it is not the efficacy that relates to CBD only with cancers, even with our unique group of epileptic patients, and especially with children, especially with the children that we work with. THC is a very profound part of the healing process for them, or at least to sustain wellness, to reduce seizure activity. So, I mean, I think that, again, there are two different topics on the table. One is farming and maintaining the relationship of farmers to the food and medicine, plant medicines, plant foods.
And phytoremediating.
Yeah, it bioremediates as well. So, but how, and that is not only food for us as human beings, but food for nature, the planet as well, and the balance that we bring into living and feeding off this planet and nurturing it. So it's a very, it's a huge opportunity, and yet we're not working together. We're working against an umbrella, or really a dome of kind of federal pirating and corporate, how corporations influence the laws in order to obtain complete control over a product and the mass delivery of that product. I would say, that CBD trended to be a great deal more than it is, and not that it doesn't have some efficacy, because of course it does. Now, without THC, I mean, we just, again, that's within our group. We don't see the effectiveness. I just haven't seen it personally. I'm not talking about a handful of people either. It's quite a big number. Again, it is not, 10,000 people, but.
And Val, could I actually jump in on that too? Yeah, so yeah, I know Jason David has the exact same story as well, with all the pediatric epilepsy kids that he works with. They found kind of, because there was so many kind of CBD products in the market that were just isolated CBD, they were having issues with administering that to a lot of pediatric epilepsy kids, where they would in fact have more seizures than they've had in recent time. And so ultimately, I know Jaden, his son, and Jason's David whole journey with his pediatric epilepsy group was kind of diving more into acidic cannabinoids, because they're finding more consistent ability across batches to find effect and healing than they would in just the batch to batch kind of isolated CBDs, where they were trying to find a kind of more whole plant kind of side of it. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of point that out. And then kind of to the phytoremediation point. It's interesting because the endocannabinoid system is it's the master homeostatic regulating system in our body, bring your balance. And so I feel like it's doing that to the earth too, where we plant it. And so much of the cannabis and hemp that we're planting inadvertently is phytoremediating the soil and bioaccumulating all the toxins from heavy metals and historical agricultural compounds that were used in the area, thought to have, multiple day half-lives, turning out to have, decade half-lives when they're in the soil, in the dark, hidden under the ground, because of how much they were used in the past. And so, you know, just this idea of homeostasis, regulation, and how kind of cannabis is doing that to our body and in healing, I feel like it's definitely doing that to the earth too. And so when we talk about planting hemp, it's like, what are we planting it for? You know, is it going for drug medicines, for whole plant extracts that are going to pediatric epilepsy kids and cancer patients? Or should it be going to grow rope for multiple years and phytoremediate the soil, you know, and focus on that side of it, you know, so that one day they can do whole plant extracts instead of just, you know, isolate CBD, because anybody that's doing isolate CBD is essentially, you know, in a forced position to do that because of how much heavy metals or pesticides are in there, you know, and that's beyond the just working to get around the 0.3%, you know, legal limit.
Yeah, it's the warped regulation. You know, like the people that I'm working with are, you know, again, they're able to get into the shallow end of the pool. They can't go down into the deep end yet, so they got to keep everything compliant. And this latest interim ruling from the DEA is just problematic in that anybody who's taking, you know, legalized hemp, which was made legal from the Farm Bill, it says 0.3%, into their building. Now, as Marcus points out, as soon as they're processing it, it becomes, again, a Schedule I material. And that just, I think it just points out the inconsistencies in the two. And, you know, what I don't hope is that they're giving Trump an idea to throw a Hail Mary here to save the hemp industry. In fact, I should have said that probably. But, you know, I think, again, I really understand what you're saying, Valerie, and I'd love to be able to use the whole plant spectrum. If the cannabis plant teaches us anything, it teaches us that single ingredient medicine is just not appropriate and not correct. So I totally agree with you, and I think your patient results speak volumes to that point.
I think if you follow it back to its root, it's really quite easy and simple to see, you know, oh, how did CBD get so hyped? It's like, well, you had an enormous amount of people who decided they wanted to make money in an industry like cannabis that wasn't cannabis, that didn't have THC, that somehow had isolated through this, you know, narrative that was created however many years ago. Oh no, this is hemp, a distant relative of cannabis.
Well, and Mark, we said before that, you know, pharmaceutical companies have us lulled into believing whatever's wrong with you, there's a pill for that. And that pill typically in the FDA paradigm contains a single active ingredient. So Bethesdarin or Bapabudabat or whatever, I don't even know how they name those anymore. They just seem like to have some fictitious name that doesn't, I guess, piss people off or is politically correct. But, you know, if you listen to those commercials on television, it's amazing. The commercials more about all the side effects you're going to get when you take this FDA-approved drug.
Well, that's reason 12,967 that I do not have cable television. Snip. Get rid of that stuff.
I just wanted to mention that besides the problem with low terps and the bad soils, in 2018, less than 50,000 acres of hemp for CBD was grown in the United States. In 2019, 180,000 acres was planted for CBD, and the CBD percentages were higher.
Yeah,
so think about it. Supply and demand is a hard reality to fight.
And it was
and having absolutely no infrastructure doesn't help in any way, shape, or form, because it's easier to do CBD because all you have to do is put it on a screen as opposed to actually crush the herds, actually wet the hemp by water or biologicals, etc. So unless these CBD people invest in an infrastructure, we're stuck with it. Hi.
Welcome, Etienne, and happy belated birthday, brother.
Thank you, buddy. Much love to you all.
Happy belated birthday. Great to see you.
I like that lamp, Etienne. That's cool. Never seen that.
Etsy. It's just a lampshade.
I was wondering, of course. Well, I'd love to be able to pick up a CBD drink out when I was out and about, but when I look at anything CBD on the menu, it immediately repels me because I'm thinking like, Is it some weird bizarro distillate? How do I know it's safe? I mean, I already know it's not going to have any effect, but you know, just the idea to me now, it's a turnoff. I think that's a marketing issue. I think once the market narrows and we can trust the suppliers and how the CBD is made, maybe we will be able to enjoy it more in the real world.
But assuming you can find pure CBD, there is a use for it that I can mention. What you do is you make a small pipe load of homegrown THC weed. You put a little sprinkle full of the pure CBD on top of it, and you vape it or you smoke it, and wango bango, you get the benefits of the THC, the terpenes, the full spectrum, and the CBD kick in the butt.
Yeah. So, something like that is appropriate.
There.
And what we ended up doing was we had really good hemp flower, so we really grew, you know, sustainable, regenerative, organic hemp crops. And so because we babied these plants so well, we actually got really high terpenes in the flower profile. So we were getting between 2.5 and 2.7% terpenes in our hemp flower.
That's great, Peter. What were the percentages of CBD?
So we were getting, well, it depends on the genetic expression. So, you know, and it depends on the heterogeneous soil. So, and the fertilization. Most of our customers were getting between 15 and 22% CBD, again, contingent on the genetic capacity before we had to pull, before we hit the aggregate. Mm-hmm.
Weren't the majority of those getting more than 0.3% THC? Yeah, they were. Whenever I see people that had more than 15% CBD, they usually break the THC limits.
Right. Yeah, that goes to the genetics of the plant. But so what we did to go more along your point was because we had about, you know, an average of 2.5 terpenes and between 20 and 25 terpene types in the profile, we extracted those. So we extracted the terpenes from a lot of this hemp flower, and then we added it to a lot of the CBD tinctures that were out there. And we had some experiments where, you know, some of our customers would give that CBD, what we are calling right now as an isolate, to their customers with the terpenes added and without the terpenes. And with a lower amount of CBD, the efficacy was like 10x as far as the...
I understand, and that makes a lot of sense, Peter. My question is, when you did that, was the profile and the ratios in the terpenes constant? In other words, from the dried manicured flower or whatever you were using to the finished extracted terpene, did the ratios remain, or did you lose some of the more volatile monoterpenes?
So we processed it at room temperature. So that was a big thing that took us about 6 months to try and figure out. And we captured the good majority of them. So one lab told us we had more than 30 spikes within the analysis. And so we kept most of them. The smell also was the same. If you smelled the flower versus the terpenes, it was very
that tells you a lot. If the smell is the same, that's a good sign.
Yeah, it was the same. So yeah, when we took those terpenes and we added them to these edible and topical products, people were actually feeling it. They were like, whoa, this is what CBD is supposed to feel like? I didn't know that this is what it was. So you still got that full body relaxation, joyous, creative, all those beautiful things that you get with this plant, aside from having the psychoactive effect.
Thank you for saying that, because I was wondering, what are we supposed to be experiencing with CBD? I mean, here I am, an expert with the shop and everything. I don't even know.
Yeah, people don't know what they're supposed to feel. And again, what we're finding is you need to add terpenes at a milligram per cannabinoid ratio. So people don't even know how to apply terpenes yet in some of these products. They're saying, oh, there's terpenes in your product. So what we have found in our testing is that for every and it depends on whether you're doing a tincture or a vape pen, But let's say if you're doing a tincture that has 1,000 milligrams of CBD, you want around 100 milligrams of terpenes. So that's a good ratio on a vape pen. Now on a tincture, or wait, I might have said that backwards. On a tincture, you would want like 5%, because otherwise the terpenes are too spicy. So you'd want like 50 milligrams of terpenes inside 1,000 milligrams of CBD. That's kind of like a natural ratio. Whereas in a vape pen, you'd want about 100 milligrams.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying, Peter, because you don't really find even bread for terpenes breaking much over the 5-6% terpene by dry weight content.
Yeah.
It just, I mean, it can be done, but it's not being sold. It's very rare, and it's a lot of work breeding something like that breaks the 5%.
Yeah, and what's been nice for us is we've started to play with our terpenes in the THC market, and people are calling us back. Some of the vape pen companies that have started to use our terps, and they're saying that they're high for like 4 hours. You know, they're not really high, but 4 hours later they're still feeling the effects. They still have that essence.
So those are hemp
You
derived.
can also dial in the terpenes so that you're just adding the ones that offer the specific synergistic effects with THC or CBD, whatever. I prefer THC myself, but so that if you add myrcene, pinene, limonene, and a couple of other ones, they will not only modulate it in particular ways you like, up, down, sideways, but they also, some of them have the power to potentiate THC and make it stronger.
Yeah.
Those are hemp derived terpenes, Peter?
They're all hemp derived, and we did different extractions, right? So when we used the good agricultural practices, we got 25 terpenes in the profile, maybe more sometimes. In the other sides where we weren't really amending the soils, we had like 5. So what would happen is, what we're starting to see is that it's not what one terpene does on its own, but what they produce in combination that truly make them efficacious.
So how are you isolating your hemp terpenes?
I'm sorry?
How are you isolating your hemp terpenes?
So we have a couple different ways. We've been playing with all kinds of different extraction methodologies, but we can chat about that, you and I.
Yeah, he's got something different, Mark. You gotta go to email.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go there.
No, it's all good. It's interesting though.
Well, what I was going to say, Mark, is what Sam was touching on is, this is a cart that I made that's completely solventless. It's a pack spot. I made this in Happy Valley. And it's 68% total TAC. It's 11.7% THCV, 2.8% CBC, 5.5% CBG. So, but at 11% terpenes, this thing gets me, where I need to go really quickly. And I really enjoy it. And it's actually more enjoyable on the roll off on the back end than something in the 80s to me. And I can go back to it time and time again throughout the day and not feel lethargic at all. So I think, to your point, and what Sam was touching on, the modulating factors of the terpenes are really extremely important, more so than I ever thought and ever really believed to be. And I think, what you've been touching on really proves that. That's an awesome mixture, Colin. That's an awesome mixture out there.
This
is beautiful too.
There's less than 10 terpenes that potentiate cannabis. There's maybe twice that number that modulate the effects and make it, up or down or, those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Lemon G is a beautiful variety. I'm sure a lot of you guys have grown it, but for some reason, in the processing of it, it really translates for solventness really well. But it's a really hard one to work with to get volume. It really doesn't walk very well at all.
You taking off, Soma? He's taking off. That was a cool way to do it. I like that. Go ahead, Colin.
Well, I've been honing in on this process, Marcus, as you know, and we've all been learning about this a lot over the years. And I think, to fractionate, is really interesting to me. And I think, to go back and look at the terpene process, and I don't want to touch on the process too much because I think, like you all in this room, we have our things we want to, hold to the chest. But I think
man, in Hash Church, we used to talk about our shit all the time.
Yeah.
Boy,
So, all right. So if it's cool, guys, I'll talk about it. So I think
that's when it was all illegal
under vacuum.
I vote we change the name to Hash Secret Church.
Yeah. All right. So extracting terpenes, I think there's several different methodologies. There's there's under nitrogen, under vacuum, that goes into cold traps and so on and so forth. And then there's the steam distillation, and then there's even deeper things that are mixtures of all these things. So, I'm really interested in working with all those and putting it back as an ingredient like you all are. But I question, I just want to open up the dialogue to this. What do you believe for terpenes would be the right avenue for real extraction of the sesquiterpenes and a lot of the monoterpenes that we know that transform and as they dry, how do we create these experiences? Because it's a very different taste structure on my palate when I smoke flower, because it's cured terpenes and they're different types of terpenes, right? When we're extracting it, mostly for me, it's fresh material, it's live, and I'm getting a very specific type of terpene. So I want to open up the idea that, what are your thoughts on these different types of terpenes and how they can be utilized together to create these experiences that are more profound and closer to the relationships that we have throughout the plant's life cycle, if you will.
Well, I found the monoterpenes were much more appropriate for both modulation and especially potentiation. But yeah, what is myrcene? Is that a monoterpene, Mark?
Yes. Okay. And myrcene is kind of like the way CBGA is kind of like the mother.
I understand exactly.
Of all cannabinoids, myrcene's kind of like the mother of all terpenes. So usually, things that are rich with myrcene are rich with the other monoterpenoids that myrcene can easily be rearranged to. And that other one was that hashishene terpene, right? The degradation terpene that they find in hash. And that's just one of them, right?
I don't know anybody who smoked hashishene with THC to report what it does to THC.
Didn't those guys? I thought that Italian group did that. I thought they did that.
Not that I know of. They didn't smoke it with pure hashishene.
Well, I guess the point is that if you're smoking old hash, aged hash, with a lot of crust on the outside, you're probably smoking some hashishene.
That may be true, but that's not science. That's just speculation.
Well, we could do that on hash.
Well, here we like to do a mixture of science and speculation.
Yeah. Fuck yes.
We do specu-science here.
Exactly.
Fuck not.
Exactly. I do have some 10-year-old hash sitting here that's pretty crusty on the outside. I could do a little experiment, I guess.
I remember we smoked some up in Pemberton, Marcus. That same stuff?
It probably was. Did it taste like perfume?
I don't remember, but I was just super lit. I remember that. Looking out the mountains with you.
It's got the craziest terp profile that I've never, when I first started smoking it, because I had a bunch of it and I broke it up in a bunch of different ways and put it in a bunch of different spots. And I just wanted to see how it preserved differently. But the one that seemed to preserve the most unique just hardened over completely. And then this goo in the middle just has this almost Mendo breath like perfume taste to it. It's insane when you exhale it.
Yeah, so you got to believe just like wine and just like cheese.
Whoops.
Go ahead, Valerie.
Go ahead, Valerie.
Excuse me, Mark. Are any of you working with flavonoids and their antioxidant capabilities and the capacity for that?
Yeah, there's 21 flavonoids found in cannabis, or 23. And I was going to explore them just like we did with terpenes 25 years ago. But what I found out was that flavonoids, when you smoke them, if you take them orally, they're active. If you smoke them, they deactivates them, and they're not contributing to the subjective effects of THC, which was my interest.
But pardon me. Is that are they affected then by in extraction? Like
yes. So if I can just for a second.
Okay, let me just ask the question. If
they're not thermally stable.
Are they affected by low heat olive oil extraction?
Yes.
Same way? They are.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, they're like Mark was about to jump. Mark, why don't you chime in and explain?
So they're so most of them are what are called glycosides. And what glycosides are, there are two portions to the molecule. There's sort of like a terpenoid portion to the molecule, and there's kind of like a sugar portion of the molecule. And these things are absolutely thermally unstable. In fact, I think they're part of the components that make distillate like orange and dark red, and like when you see some of those dark colors in there. And the one thing about flavonoids is that they really have what's called a high extinction coefficient, which means that a little bit of the compound goes a long way in terms of imparting color into it. So what I do know is that they are thermally unstable. So any process that applies heat to an extract will degrade those compounds. And I've seen, we've seen them in our chromatography come after the cannabinoids. And typically what that means is that they're really, really polar. This is just on normal phase chromatography, just, flash chromatography on the bench. And there's just a mixture of many, many different compounds, at least we found. So
the other
has anybody
room temperature is the key with the terpenes.
What's that?
I'm sorry.
Room temperature.
Yeah, room temperature processing.
Right.
With a multiple step distillation process is key to keeping the integrity of all of those little guys.
I agree.
So if you had some sort of methodology then that could actually then heat from its stable point to the vaporization of cannabis, could there be a vaporization intake that way as opposed to a flash heat?
It's an interesting thought.
I just don't think they distill. I could be wrong, but I don't think you can distill them. I think they thermally degrade.
Yeah, and the other thing,
because again, when you talk about flavonoids, about flavonoids, it's a very general class of compounds, but the ones that are found in cannabis, for the most part, are things called glycosides, and typically you can't distill those. Typically, so.
Well, the thing I run into mostly is at least in the state I'm in, and with the license that I'm part of, it is we don't have anyone that can really test for them. On the hemp side, there's someone in Florida that you can send your material to, but it's really difficult. I mean, I'm asking questions that no one has the equipment to give me answers for or with, so it's really hard. It's very limited in terms of what we can actually learn, at least for me.
Well, that's kind of true and kind of not. I mean, do you have access to HPLC?
Well, the labs I work with in the state of Massachusetts only go so far. There's 3 labs in the total state. It's hard.
Yeah. You got to have an HPLC in your lab, Colin. You should have one that you can just do your R&D routine research with, so you can answer some questions for yourself.
We're in the midst of, it's a big conversation, but yes, it's coming. It's been a slow burn for a lot of reasons, but
because
we're getting there.
Common flavonoids, I do believe that there's HPLC standards for them. Okay. So you can actually develop analytical and follow up with me. We can talk about it offline if you want.
I will, absolutely. That would be awesome. But Valerie brought up a good point. The flavonoids are really important in a plethora of ways. And I think they're really interesting to me. It's just, it's cool that you brought that up, because it's a conversation I have with myself often.
So then there has to be a way to retain flavonoids. I mean, aside from chewing on a bud.
Yeah.
So there has to be a way to retain them. Have any of you explored that opportunity?
Does flash freezing help, or does that destroy or shatter?
No, but I think she brought up a good point. I think what about just room temperature juicing?
Yeah, exactly. Well, juicing is obviously a great way to do it. It's cumbersome and of course not available to the majority of people, I would say, right? Because especially people who are ill, who cannot either wait to grow a plant. So it'd be good to, and then of course you can freeze and sell something or give it away either because of the dangers that are associated with that.
And Mark, are the flavonoids water soluble?
Actually, some of them are, but they're not very water soluble. What they will create is an emulsion, because there's kind of like a carbohydrate portion of the molecule that's water soluble, but then there's a terpenoid portion which is more hydrocarbon-like. So it would create like a soap, it would create like an emulsion. So kind of yes and no. But I think the other interesting aspect about it is that as cannabis ages, flavonoids are antioxidants, and I believe that they do have some role in our food and our diet to act as antioxidants, right? Now, obviously, we don't consume most of our antioxidants in our diet by smoking them. We eat them, right? So, so juicing makes a lot of sense on that level.
Right. I mean, that's why the raw food, it's flavonoids are an important part of the antioxidant culture,
Totally agree.
Internal culture.
Totally
So, I mean, it just seems sensible to figure out a way to provide them for people who cannot access them in the way that we normally, or so whether it's socially or medically.
What sort of juicer do you recommend for someone to use? Because I figure you probably need a little more industrial strength, using to work with hemp. It can destroy conventional machinery. So what type of juicer do you use, Valerie? And what do everybody recommend for the people who are watching?
A Norwalk.
Yeah.
Get a Norwalk.
I would agree. Norwalk's incredible. It has the.
Is there a particular model, or is it just known as Norwalk?
Let's just see. I don't even know what mine is.
It has a hydraulic press built into it.
Whoa.
It's expensive.
I figured so.
Excellent machines.
Yeah. It's the part of the whole, I think, Gerson therapy. Gerson also has a juicer. And but the Norwalk juicer is generally the one that's it has a hydraulic press, and I think some of like a vortex cutter, something like that they talk about. But it's and then they're expensive, so there are alternatives. I don't really know what is comparable to it, but they do. It is supposed to be the premium juicer.
What does a Norwalk cost on average?
It was like $500 or something.
Yeah, around there.
Years ago.
You can get more expensive ones, but yeah.
Yeah, there's $5,000 Norwalk juicers now. Just
yeah, but those are big industrial machines.
Not as big as you'd think.
Well, I mean, they're around $1,000 or so. I mean.
Yeah, I haven't bought one for 35 or 40 years. So
there's one on there. You'll always find one on eBay for $500, but I don't think you're gonna find it. I think they're probably more like $1,000 to $2,000, somewhere in there. And there is a money back guarantee. But
yeah, if you're gonna use it, and it's a really hard, good quality machine, that it would be tough to find a better one.
Wonder what alternatives.
Now, what about fresh pressing? I mean, we've talked
blending too.
We've talked about juicing, but what about pressing? I'm not talking like rosin pressing, but is there a way to cold press the cannabis in a way that would be worthy?
Sure, must be.
Doc?
I have no idea. I mean, I would think yes. I mean, you're talking like cold pressed olive oil, or like that kind of processing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just it almost gets into the rosin category, right? Because if you're actually, squeezing the plant, aren't you going to like sort of like thermally extrude the oil? I have no idea. I can't comment.
If you're worried about the temperatures, Mark, you could freeze it overnight first, then put it through that machine.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still, my mind was stuck on our last conversation about flavonoids. I was thinking more like along the lines of what type of benefits do you see with flavonoids, where perhaps like a water hash again, where you're getting a real sort of cold extract, but a particular combination of cannabinoids, flavonoids, and all the other minor components that you could get in an extract like that versus something where you're, I hate putting heat on these terpene profiles, because heat is just heat, and air starts roasting the terpenes, and especially the monoterps that Sam was talking about. The most sensitive compounds of the fragrance profile itself will all start oxidizing, and it'll leave.
Yeah, when you see the analysis of heavily processed materials, it's high in sesquiterpenes, low in monoterpenes.
So yeah, I think that what all that reflects really, Sam, is that they did probably a solvent recovery somewhere in their extraction process, and during that solvent recovery, they probably boiled off most volatile terpenes, and what remains behind are the less volatile.
So we don't really know what kind of results we would get, because we don't know how many people juice consistently fresh cannabis. So
I have a T-shirt that says,
how do we measure those benefits? We're not really looking at it, so we can't exactly measure it yet. I mean, juicing fresh cannabis is incredible. It's remarkable. So.
And if I may jump in.
Yeah.
Good.
Jump. Oh, sorry. I just getting finished getting a haircut at the barber called Get Faded. So I had a couple things I was really stoked to jump in on.
Faded.
But, yeah, Get Faded Barbershop. Pretty funny.
Put a mask on, bro. What are you doing, man?
All right. Well, I just got to my car. Sorry. So on the juicing part, so Dr. Courtney was my first medical doctor in California, and he's in so many ways, the big boss dude on the juicing. He really godfather juicing, all the things, and became a really good friend of mine before he moved to South America. But he towards the end there, he was really advocating also blending, like deveining the plant and blending it. If you have a Vitamix or a Ninja, it's a lot more accessible for the average kind of patient with a plant or two in their yard. But you very, very great way also to get acidic cannabinoids, and I'm sure also preserving whatever flavonoids present in the material. And since we're on juicing, I'll kind of back off, but I would love to at some point, whenever kind of share some information on the mono and sesquiterpenes to some of the terpene kind of dialogue that was happening a little bit ago.
Dr. William Courtney came to mind the second they started talking about juicing to me as well. And he's, definitely incredible. And I still follow him on Facebook, which his wife now runs that account, and they make posts every once in a while about their chickens and stuff. So I hope they're doing well.
Yeah, juicing really brought it to the forefront.
Cool temperatures are important.
Is the biggest problem. Accessibility for everyone becomes the biggest problem, because we don't know what it can do. Obviously, it has benefits, but yeah.
Would a wine press work, guys? I mean, to Sam's point, some of the guys in our lab use a wine press to squeeze out material after it's been decarbed and spent, just to kind of help it along to get green wasted. And I think that perhaps it's just like a crank that is cranked down with a big circular vat, and perhaps something like that would work.
Yeah, I think of flash freezing and then pressing because I, avoiding the heat, but somehow trying to save everything possible. But I mean, you'd need a field of that just to get an ounce,
Well, I use my Vitamix a lot for just because of the whole plant, excuse me, whole plant access. And so it's thick and it was quite difficult to drink whole plant cannabis.
So my growers sent me
Quite difficult, really. So I just
adding to a smoothie though.
Well, in small amounts. Yeah. I mean, I do that all the time. So, I mean, I really do. What I do normally is just pour it through a sieve. And so, the plant matter, which is quite difficult to digest, one of the reasons it's great to build with, is, just pouring it. I mean, I don't know, there's no science behind this. I don't know, but that I really need to ingest all that fiber and that cellulose. So, but I think straining it seems perfectly reasonable. At least it does to me. And
I use the Vitamix as well, and it seems to work really well. If I don't put a lot of buds in there, if I put maybe like 4 or 5 buds in the Vitamix and just blend it up, it's real smooth and like water, and it tastes good. So I like the Vitamix with some hemp seed.
Don't strain the hemp seed.
Put a little terpenes in there, maybe some roots, some burdock root, some elderberries. Keep healthy.
Oh, you have the juice bar going on.
Some apples and grapes and dates. Yeah.
Yeah, apples and cannabis are great together.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
I'm a big fan of carrot and ginger.
Nice.
Oh.
Yeah, me too.
To be honest, I love ginger.
Ginger's amazing.
The recipe section.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's got their favorites. That's
the
for
next
sure.
show is creative cooking in House Church.
If everybody makes their own, one they like, then somebody will make a Hash Church recipe book of actually, stuff we like.
Well, that actually brings me to something, Etienne, which I will show you guys right now. So a gentleman hit me up not too long ago, and he said, listen, I've been watching you guys on Hash Church since the beginning. You've totally gotten me jumped down this rabbit hole, super inspired. I started, learning how to grow and had some failures and then had some successes. And then I started playing around with just crossing some plants, and he made a cross and he wanted to name it Hash Church. And so he sent me this picture of the plant and he said, yeah, this is it. Like it creates lots of resin and the hash is really good. And it dumps in the 120 and in the 90 bag. And so I wanted to give a shout out to Mark, who made this plant, which was the DNA genetics kosher sorbet crossed with Canuck cookies. So that is a kosher kush crossed with a sorbet to make one parent, and then a OG kush crossed with a Durban poison to make the other parent. And so this is potentially it's going to be called the Hash Church. I just want to grow it out, and
it's got a little Canadian. There's a little Canadian thing going on there, is there?
I don't know. I just think it's really cool that he hit us up and he sent me right away. This is the beauty of living in Canada right now. He's like, hey, can I send you like some seeds of the Hash Church and some clones? And I'm like, why, yes, you can actually. Absolutely. And so he sent me a couple, but they didn't really make it. He didn't send them very in the best way. And then he sent, I have to actually go get the containers that he sent these in because they were so beautiful. It kind of blew my mind. He was like, he beefcaked it up. First, he just sent them in those kind of cheap little clone, with the little light on it. Then he made his own PVC piping, drilled holes, put these little lights with a battery pack on each one, and then painted them up like a tattoo artist would. So Best Friend Farms, welcome. Say hello for 2 minutes while I go get these clone containers and interrupt you when I get back and show you how ridiculous these are.
Nice frosty job there, buddy.
Yeah, great work on your soil biology. The trichome structure is unbelievable. Good job on that. Great job.
How many week was that? Oh, Did he hear us?
Speak up,
Ryan, you
man.
there?
Did I hear you? All right. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, and I'm going to show.
Here.
So that, can you guys hear me?
We
Yeah,
can hear you.
we couldn't hear Brian though.
We couldn't hear
All
Best
right.
Friend Farms though.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, we'll get him unmuted.
I
We'll
came
get.
in kind of late.
There you go,
Yeah, sorry to
dude.
miss
There you
Sorry,
go.
buddy.
No, you're not late
How
at
you
all.
doing?
I'm about to show these sick clone cases that Mark made when he sent me the Hash Church cut. And so this is one of them. All right, I just gotta make mute your mic there. There we go. There we go. Yeah, and then this one too. Both
Kind
hash.
of looks like prison taps.
Man, it looks pretty cool in my opinion. I haven't spent as much time in prison as Sam has.
Yeah.
But
I was a tattoo artist for 25 years in prison.
In Chino, right?
Yeah, pull them back toward you a little bit, Marcus. Yeah, that's better to see. Oh, they're
Let me get my hand out of the way. There we go. Yeah. And then the other sides are just
well done. Well done.
It's lovely.
yeah. So shout out to Mark. I've
That's
given
why
one
you're late, right, Mark?
Exactly. No, I was pretty impressed with this gift. I love being living in Canada right now, where we can send each other clones. You know, it's like it's not illegal. It's absolutely incredible and amazing. And I hope that it spreads all over the world. And more importantly, I hope that everyone that is currently in prison for cannabis offenses gets let out like yesterday. That is the Last Prisoners Project that Steve D'Angelo has been doing, and a whole group of people that are involved with is definitely worth checking into and looking into and giving support to. Because while we're living in this sort of mildly utopian world of cannabis being legal on this at least small level, because I still hear plenty of people complaining about everything that's wrong with it, I think they forget about what it was like to have their doors kicked in and their dog shot and then taken off to prison. But I digress. Yeah, let's get those folks out of prison who are in there for cannabis. Absolutely
what happens
ridiculous.
in a civilized nation. And then you can't stop asking for more, right? More freedom.
Never.
More freedom.
And give them jobs in the cannabis industry. They've earned their stripes.
Absolutely. It's sad that there's places that actually want to keep people from working in the cannabis industry that have cannabis felonies. It's like, dude, that is a resume if I've never seen one.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Yeah, shout out also to Farmer and the Felon. They're Ned Dennis from Canacraft are working on that, and they're supporting Last Prisoner Project also, but they're really trying to put the farmer, the drug war veteran, on a pedestal and to really recognize those rockers that were earned and that farmer has, and usually grows some of the best herb ever.
Right, they're really doing remarkable work. They continue to. Wham's going to be having a little spotlight with them. It's really appreciated.
That's awesome.
But it'll take a while before it gets there. Not this month.
Yeah, gatherings have definitely been kind of put on hold. I mean, no one's really talking about it, but talk about like a major hit to people who love getting together and enjoying cannabis together, like a respiratory illness, virus, world pandemic. Like, not only are you not supposed to even gather, but you can't do the very thing that we used to do, which was get all together, puff lots of cannabis, and cough in each other's faces. That's just done.
Yeah, but you know what we did? We
used to go see live music where bands would be on a stage and people would be dancing, and the whole thing.
And then we had a 20-year overnight success story where we got deemed essential because we actually fought back and got our rights to be equal and open. So that was actually quite a Herculean undertaking we did in California that now everybody else has been able to benefit from. So, cannabis has been deemed essential. So we're going to use this post-COVID to actually fight back harder.
I will say I was in the only state that deemed recreational non-essential. It was insane. It was insane. I really,
What
I think
state was that?
Massachusetts. It's brutal, and I think that hindered a lot of access.
Booze was essential.
Well, this is also
Right.
this also is why you have to work hard over the years and still maintain. And this is where the grassroots, where we had the support in California, we've maintained 20 years of working with our representatives. So when we called them, we got responses. This shows the grassroots work that still needs to be laid in Massachusetts, so that, because we saw you try to fight back, but you just didn't have the network that we had to rely on. So take this as a note, states that want to come online, work within your state, local, and federal, because we got our local authority in Berkeley, which forced the state to say, well, if Berkeley's going to do it, then we're going to have to allow it in the state. And that the Bay Area caused the rest of the state, which caused the rest of the nation. So
Go Berkeley.
you'll really need to take focus after this and really get down to activating your people to get active with your representatives, local, state.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, it's a totally different beast out here. As you know, it's like it's different than the California market. But I think, to your point, they listen when it has to do with policy, and they are open. It's just going after it and putting it together, as you're saying. I'm 100% behind it. I think it's just important for, the whole conversation as a national conversation to be brought together, because it's time. We need to have that conversation. I think that it needs to be brought to the table in a real way. But like you're saying, it's got to be policy driven. So yeah.
So this is cool. So I just left my joint in the front of my computer, and I can feel the heat coming up from it, and you can just see how all the resin's kind of melting into the joint now. So I kind of like activated it.
You activated your joint. That's Johnny B Tech right there. Joint activation tech.
Joint activation. I'm just sitting here smiling. I'm like, I feel the heat coming up. I'm like, what's going on? Like when all my resin from my melting into there, and I'm like, that's I activated my joint.
All right. Love the passion. Love the passion for the hashin'. Got my Got Melt shirt on today. Well, do you? Do you got melt? I'm hoping
He's all about the melt. And Stu's awesome. He's always making the hash, and he's talking about the hash.
Shout out to Stu. Shout out to Iced Earth.
It'll be interesting.
Brian from Best Friend Farms. I wanted to ask you, how are things going in the season? How's Maine going?
Oh, it's going really well. Thanks for asking. So just been super busy out straight, harvesting vegetables left and right. And the second depth session has just been harvesting over the last week and into this next week. So yeah, had a great turn, had high humidity this summer, but we fought through it with good vigor and health and good living soil. And yeah, going really well. So,
some of those crosses? Yeah, exactly. What are some of the crosses?
I'm running a bunch of new gear this year. The gas mask, of course, so loving that one. That's our best hash plant period, but it did really good in the depth, and second depth turn even better. I have a lot of Woodstock Pharmacy gear going this turn, who's a local breeder up here in Maine. So I've really promising results on that Route 26 that I posted recently, and what I'm guessing is a grape pie forward or Sunday driver grape pie, pheno friendly, super great gassy. My favorite plant in the depth right now, though, hybrid, is a white haze from the Swamp Boys. I got 3 phenotypes, and they are just absolutely monstrous and amazing, stacked up, super greasy white. And what I understand it to be is a lot of the 90-95% plus likability on the PIF side. For when I kind of went back on when I posted, that's the info I got back, was what they were working with was heavy PIF, and I'm kind of new to that one, but not new to haze. So
yeah, that New York City PIF is a little faster finisher. I used to run that the New York City PIF a lot, along with the diesel, but that's a cool one. Nice. Having those genes in there is going to be the taste is going to be just beautiful, because that stuff is just legendary.
It looks like power smoke. Like it, I don't know how the hash will be on it, although I'm interested because the F1 vigor to it and the formation it's clustering up and knuckling up with the white is insane. Just insane arms.
If you would like
stacked
to leave a
right up,
voicemail
super
and know your
long.
party's 7-digit extension, please enter it now.
Yeah, I mean that's I can't wait to see it, man, and hopefully come up and check it out.
You've reached a
Oh, I'd love to, yeah. One of the
man,
phenotypes is absolutely Haze forward. I'd love to share them with you. I think you'd be real intrigued with those for sure.
Jeff, I had a quick question. So Haze is terpinolene, which is like the Jack, Trainwreck, Sage, Durban, terpene. So Piff, I always heard of Piff from the East Coast. I never smelled that. What is that smell?
So it's very sweet. It's like a sweet. It's such a intense terpene, sweet crunch berry with a haze in there. It's just like this sweet. It's a very unique
berry
forward berry that lingers in the air. It's unmistakable.
Pine berry.
Yeah, it's unmistakable. It's why New York, like most of the people that smoke cannabis in New York, their taste for cannabis is so heightened because of those varieties that have been grown in this, predominantly, spread out through the city. So it's really an interesting culture there. But that variety, if you can get your hands on that cut, it's a fast finishing haze that is just beautiful. It's the
powerhouse,
exotic,
super throwdown.
With the haze, I'd say it's the best way.
I mean, it's like picked up on the haze column from what I remember back even out of Amsterdam or New York, old school haze. And it just like, especially meeting the white in this one pheno of the three that's obviously the Piff heavy all day is just like you said, so exotically pine berry, loud haze type. It's new to me too. That's why I'm so pulled to it. So
I can't wait to check it out. I was, if you we'll have to get to the Piff, but it's a beautiful variety. I think it's, a lot of people, it's very coveted, but it's at the same time, it really reminds me of the mango haze, guys. I think that's one. I'm trying to think of like a variety that's accessible that people have all had. It's like the mango haze, but more berry in there. It's really interesting, guys. I don't know. I think I'm super stoked for you because the white also doesn't really. It could go either way with the white, in terms of this, the P1 stock, but it's and how
it met really well. Yeah, it met really well with the white. I got some arms of it that are literally like the size of my arm with clusters like my fist right up it. And that one's like a more gassy pine versus the Piff pheno, which is that Piff pheno is all big white kind of cactus looking, talking like 10-12 inch colas, like 3-4 inches wide at the depth. And you can't touch it. It's just totally will grease your hands completely all out. It's like it's haze grease. It's a really greasy hybrid.
Nice.
And
that sounds like her. Because that's cool.
We got a new hybrid in there that I'm looking at for hash too, though. Like coming onto the indoor in back of gas mask is a Woodstock Pharmacy gear also thing, and it's called Snowdrift, which is the old Snow Dog cross to NAC, which is OGKB Mac. And I got this one phenotype that is just absolutely velvety grease, Snow Dog forward all day, and just looks like the hash plant, like legendary type hash making.
Did it pass any of the Mac terpene profiles on? Because I did some work with the Mac. I made an F2 of it and used it as a male, and it really passed a lot of the haze traits on in terms of the terpene profile.
It looks like one pheno like did that.
I'm actually popping
one pheno did
the terpinolene haze side of the Mac right now.
Nice. Yeah, the Mac only I've worked with it just a little bit, but it seems to throw that terpinolene in the mix like predominantly in most of the phenos. So it's cool. It's actually pretty interesting variety. I know you can go either way with that one. I know a lot of people are either love it or don't like it, But
you remember that Big Sur Holy weed
Yep.
out west. That
Yep.
one crossed to an OG when I was back up in Humboldt years ago. Was some of the loudest and friendliest, like pleasant to smoke rosin or bubble hash, like solventless especially, was just absolutely standout favorite. Was the Big Sur Holy OG out west, I remember. With same terpene family too.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. We've been doing some pheno hunts lately, and it's been fun to see the new terpene profiles that are happening. There's some interesting like Jolly Rancher style smells coming out.
What'd you get that profile out
of? Actually, Ethos Jolly Rancher.
That's the name of the type. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. And then God, we did Wedding Cake times Mac. And that's interesting because it has like a wedding cake kind of gas, and then when you on the exhale you get the Mac and the terpenoline on the back end, which is really nice. But yeah, that's, I've been really looking forward to trying new stuff out. I've been also this lemon brulee I washed, did about 60 pounds, washed 60 pounds of it, and it's pretty cool. It's an interesting variety. It's the lemon G times Crème de la Crème. So it's good. It kind of brings the lemon G profile into a better return for hash, So it's for the guys that are looking for the lemon G profile that don't get the returns they're looking for off the lemon G, I'd say to take a look at that cross. I think that's COVID genetics that makes those. But yeah.
Wait, did you say COVID genetics?
Yeah, COVID out of Colorado.
Oh, nice. I just thought the name was.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, one of the guys that I worked with at the facility, he's friends with him, and he just showed me his work, and I thought it was pretty interesting. And I know Jordy from the Dutch consulting agency had run some stuff of his out, at Wilcox, and he found some success with it. So I just, I'm not always, so keen on just jumping into trying stuff, but, it seemed like the right parent stock to go after to pheno hunt with, to find something. So I think they found, 2 phenos when they ran it, and then kept I think they're keeping number 5 or something like that. I washed number 9 and number 5. So we're going to try to look at the numbers on that. So, but it's interesting, like pheno hunting is like that black box, like you get in there and it's like a little bit of light, it gets exciting. And then there's like another light flickers in the next corner over there, and you're like, ooh, look at that one. It's
I
fun.
agree.
Yeah.
It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Keepers, not some don't make the cut. We definitely saw some, a little bit of early mold on a few types that had to just get cut right out, even unfortunately. But we had some great resistance actually showing on, I should share, the 24 karat gold crossed with a Oni's Trop cookie that I did. A friend gave me an F2 male Oni, that Trop cookie, like a couple years back, and I decided to use him because he was powerhouse looking and colorful. And man, the resistance factor and even terp meeting I got on the Trop cookie meets the kosher tangy there. Went back to, I got a spread where one of the largest yielder actually is just watermelon papaya all day, like super watermelon Jolly Rancher forward.
Nice.
Outstanding.
Like that water. Have you run the Zum Zum crosses at all? The watermelon stuff that became a lot of the stuff that became the watermelon Skittles, I guess, and all that stuff.
I haven't. I heard about it. I was assuming.
I haven't. Very watermelon-esque, but that's what it reminds me of. That's a really interesting variety to run.
That's the second watermelon terp I've found, actually. Now I've heard of the gear you're talking about, but I haven't tried it. Now I found watermelon over 3 years. I brought back Strawberry Fields that was crossed to a Forum cut from that I bred out west, and we just got, or what was it, Forum cut to Strawberry Fields. And it was just all day. We called it Strawberry Frost cookies, but it was watermelon forward. Now this one, the 24K Trop cookie meats, it's a little bit more papaya friendly, but watermelon, same watermelon terp. Hard to believe how similar to the other one it is, even for watermelon.
Ani's papaya is to me like legend. It's just like his pinnacle. That papaya, I would always search that out, and it's just amazing. It's that profile is just special. It's really, really delicious to enjoyable experience to have. Since we were talking about phenotypes, I was thinking about Sam, and he's probably grown more plants than any of us in our entire lives. And I was curious to ask Sam, what varieties and what part of the world were those varieties from that really that you've seen that produce the right type of heads for water hash? And like, is there anything that you've ever done that's looked at that type of stuff?
You're talking about doing it with water sifting?
I don't think it matters though. If it
so?
works for dry sifting, like if it's a great strain for dry sifting, I'm just trying to get Sam to still answer your question, because if you ask him in regards to water hash, he's going to say, I'm not the best person to ask that question to.
Yeah.
If you ask him from a dry sift standpoint.
Yeah. So from a sifting standpoint or an extraction standpoint that you prefer?
In general, to be honest, Afghan indica wideleaf varieties actually have bigger heads of resin, and the plants are actually bred to produce resin. They don't care if it's on the flowers, the leaves, the whatever, but lots of resin. The other problem, of course, with these wideleaf varieties is in Afghanistan and places like this is that they're not all THC, because 25% of them are high in THC only, 25% of them are high in CBD only, and 15% of them have a blend of cannabinoids. So because they're bred and selected for resin, and the farmers aren't smoking individual plants, that's happened over generations and generations and generations.
And they would sieve that and then just like mix them together and then press that, Sam? Is that kind of how they would?
Well, what people are mostly growing and people are seeing mostly today are polyhybrids between wide leaf and narrow leaf, equatorial and Middle Eastern. And they can find some with really nice terpene selections and really nice head size and lots of heads, because if you want lots of hash, you've got to have lots of heads. That's where it starts.
Right. Cool.
Sam,
all the countries that have traditional hash, like West Bengal, many places in India, Thailand, Burma, Vietnam, Laos, all those countries, they all had traditional integrated ganja business, and they produced fantastic marijuana at the top end of the scale.
Interesting. That's good info, man. I appreciate that.
Sam, you mind if I ask a question? Sam, what do you know about alpha pining? Because in our data, what we see at SC Labs is it's whenever it's present or dominant in a profile without myrcene, because it's usually a tertiary terpene to myrcene, but tertiary secondary, but it's rarely like co-dominant or dominant without myrcene being present. Then we see it like less than like 3-4% of the time, kind of actually alpha pining dominant. And I had heard that terpene kind of came in through hemp lineage. Like, do you know anything about that, or do you know anything to?
No, I think what's found mostly in hemp itself, not hybrid hemp, modern hemp that's bred for CBD with THC varieties, but hemp was myrcene and caryophyllene. I think those were the two big ones.
Right. That's what I've always seen myself. But it just pining itself is just such an interesting terpene to me. I've very rarely seen it actually as a
Yeah, well, pinene is one that potentiates THC, but in my mind, it also makes it slightly fuzzier. So it's not really clear potentiation, but it does potentiate THC.
There's a paper I'll share with Marcus that I'd love shared with the group, but it's around pinene when together with THC helps to decrease the negative memory impairment effects THC has on short term. And so, I'm super curious on that. And, it's kind of,
I've totally said this before. It's that equivalent of taking the walk through the forest and clearing your head. I can't wait to read that paper, dude.
Yeah, I'll find that right now.
What a joy it is to gather with you all on the Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening for some of you in particular. It's nice. It's been, I don't know if it's been months or how long it's been. I think it's been definitely some months before we sort of chilled out and did a little hash church. So it's
been a bit.
I appreciate your guys' time, coming and hanging out and chilling and shooting the shit during this global pandemic.
And it is a way to see people across, even that live in our own town. Hi, Josh. I haven't seen you in a long time. You grew a long beard.
Yes, I did. Hi.
Hi. Barbers are hard to get to these days. I mean,
Yeah.
Me too. Not that you can see. I dropped my computer and my phone, my video. My camera doesn't work. I should drop it again, perhaps.
I can't blame the barber on
It's
this.
good to see all of you. Excuse me, Josh. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I can't blame this on the barber, though.
Yeah. No, it's style too. Thanks, you guys. Thanks for all the insights and the communication and the connection. It's pretty sweet, and especially during this time when we are so separated that we don't become divided, too distant.
Yeah,
Great
welcome
insights
to Hash Church, dude.
This is great insights in church, more than I've got as a kid, I would say.
There's a lot of
Except
different conversations.
I did have my first out of the body experience at a high mass, and when I was quite young.
Wow. We'll have to more on that on another show.
Church, at another
and then
church.
I'll tell you about one of my first out of body experiences, and it did not happen at church.
Well, the second didn't.
Interesting. Yeah, welcome, Joss.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going good, man. We're just, getting into it here. Talking terpenes, talking flavonoids, talking cannabinoids. Just talking all about the things that we seem to geek out on pretty big as we get deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole that is the cannabis community - industry.
Well, thanks for inviting me to Hash Church.
Yeah, no, I was mentioning earlier to Marcus, I'm really stoked to kind of have Josh on. It's for one, it's always been a great honor to be part of Hash Church, and I'm really, really grateful for the opportunity. And it was funny, actually. I was just getting a haircut at Get Faded Barbershop, and I had the Hash Church YouTube up, and because I was watching it, and I got whenever I was off, and the guy that was cutting my hair was actually big upping Marcus, and he's a fellow hash maker himself. That's a barber also. But I just thought that was a funny anecdote. But yeah, this has been a really trippy year, and on the testing side of it, SC Labs, this is our 10th year testing cannabis, and I was really stoked for Josh to join today, because we've been doing some kind of bit of diving and like investigative journalism in a bit of a way, kind of with identifying trends as they're happening kind of in the California like licensed testing market, as certain things are popping or trends are happening, we're kind of we're in it to try to help identify the issue and then overcome, to help our people that we work with to overcome these issues that we see oftentimes coming from outside cannabis supply chains. And so Josh actually just authored a paper. We put out a public service announcement to all those we serve around kind of this batch of contaminated pre-roll cones, like the pre-rolled cone papers. There's commercial sources, there's consumer sources you get through head shops. And so we saw this trend in a trend of about 5 or 6 groups failing for organophosphate chlorpyrifos in pre-rolls. And really quickly we identified it was the paper And so we basically dug in kind of and did a pretty wide consumer and commercial rolling paper and blunt wrap kind of testing and report. And so Josh kind of was just, just compiled all that. And yeah, just wanted to kind of set that up for you, Josh, if you'd be down to share some.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Alex said it pretty good. So we had a cluster of pre-rolls fail, and we knew that the material that had gone to him was clean. So kind of digging in, like Alex said, we traced it back to the cones. And the funny thing is, when we went and actually did a study of multiple rolling paper brands, we didn't find a lot of that pesticide in the brands that we tested. So it seems like it was a it's a batch by batch issue, but these failures sort of precipitated the study we did, and so we went and kind of pulled out any type of rolling paper product we could get our hands on. I think we got about 120. And not surprisingly, paper has trace levels of metals and sometimes trace levels of pesticides. All these papers come from organics or plant-based sources, and so it's not surprising to find metals in plants. And there's not it wasn't a story of kind of rolling papers are all grossly contaminated, but we certainly did find some instances of really contaminated rolling papers that if I was a pre-roll manufacturer, for sure I'd want to be cognizant of, and if and certainly if I was a consumer, I'd kind of want to know some of these, but anyway, so for the most part, rolling papers were relatively clean, but in a small portion of the samples we found hundreds of times the allowable limits in California for things like lead and other heavy metals, and then in some of the rolling papers we found enough pesticide where I would be concerned if I was a pre-roll manufacturer that in states like California I might actually fail a compliance batch test because
what were the levels of the pesticide you're seeing?
In pesticides, so it depends on the pesticide, but in some instances we were seeing 7 or 8 times the allowable limit in California. So if you had and it seemed to be certainly the one product category that was really kind of concerning was cellulose-based rolling papers. So we only happened to have 3 cellulose-based rolling papers in our sample size of like 120 samples. So I didn't have a really good sample size to draw from, but I can pull it up really quick here. But in 2 of the 3, all 3 of them failed for or would have, I say failed, would have failed in California had they been cannabis for an inhalable cannabis product. But 2 of the 3 had hundreds of times the allowable limit of lead. And then some of the sort of wraps were also kind of the other product category that was had some significant contamination in it. We didn't see a lot of contamination in the actual rolling papers themselves, the kind of hemp-based or the fiber-based rolling papers. Certainly some trace detections in 1 or 2 that were kind of would approach the California action limit. But again, a rolling paper only constitutes a small portion of
thousands of ppms, tens of ppms. What was the concentration regime?
So the cellulose ones were around, I want to say like kind of, they absolutely blew our kind of high calibrations, but it was, look in excess of 50 part per million of lead, in the cellulose, like clear roll type papers that, they're not super big. I remember I used to smoke those, because it was unique and interesting because you could see through it when you smoke it. We saw the chlorpyrifos issue is largely kind of, within this commercial source of rolling paper cones, pre-rolled cones, because it seems like there's a few factories in the world that make these, from one in Czechoslovakia, one in.
So what was the level of chlorpyrifos? Was that just like about 10 ppm or 100 ppm?
No. It was like, kind of between like 300 part per billion to like a part per million, whereas about 30 part per billion is a fail for a cannabis product in California. And so essentially people were taking these highly contaminated cones and then diluting the pesticide with clean cannabis that then was still kind of creating fails because of how much pesticide was in the paper, and then like Josh was saying, besides that, a lot of what we were seeing then was in the thicker ply type, kind of cones, or not cones, sorry, the hemp and tobacco kind of blunt wrap type products.
Yeah, I just pulled it up. So cypermethrin was an issue with it. Just seemed like one brand of wraps. We had 3 of them, and all 3 of them hit for cypermethrin well over the action limit. They're like, yeah, between 2 and 7 parts per million. 1 part per million would be the action limit in California. So not nothing I'd be overly concerned with, unless I was a manufacturer who was trying to not fail a batch test. As a consumer, it's not grossly contaminated. But yeah, the cellulose-based rolling papers, like Alex said, they were between 60 and 50, or one was 60, one was 55 parts per million for lead. And in California, just to give you kind of background, the action limit is 50 parts per billion. So I misspoke. They were 1,000 times. They're 1,000 times over the action limit. So
yeah, based on what you're telling me, I wonder if those compounds are actually applied to containers for pest control. Because a lot of that shit coming over from China, what they do is they just broadcast pesticide XYZ over containers in shipping areas that, again, are not very segregated on what's clean and what's not. But I don't know. I mean, those are really, really low levels of those compounds. I mean, yeah, you don't want to see any of those things in your cannabis. But when you're measuring stuff at the part per billion level, remember this conversation, Alec?
Yeah.
It's like taking a lint brush to a New York City sidewalk. You're going to find everything, man. I mean, you start looking at, we looked at, what was that? Backwoods, right? We went and took backwoods and found out they had Roundup and all kinds of shit in there. I mean, yeah, just background exposure. We live in a chemically contaminated world, Josh. I mean, what's the likelihood that this is actually either applied during the paper making process, or, like I said, maybe more accurately applied in a pest control kind of way that had nothing to do with the cellulose or nothing to do with the factory that made the.
Well, the 2 different things. The cellulose-based the cellulose rolling papers were lead, so that came from kind of probably whatever was in the fiber, the cellulose source that they used to produce these, or is coming from really kind of poorly designed equipment. If people, if wherever these papers were produced, if the machine just had lead parts, and I mean that happens all the time in manufacturing. It's not that, but
what was the level of lead again? It was
like 60 parts per million. That's a ton of lead. That's
a lot of lead.
Yeah. But with the pesticides, yeah, like in pesticides weren't a huge issue. Like these 3 for cypermethrin, I mean, that's enough where it wasn't like probably didn't get picked up from somewhere. But yeah, you're right. It could have been fumigated. I don't think anyone is applying pesticides to the papers. Or maybe the hemp source, but I industrial hemp, I don't think they I don't know. I don't want to make guesses, but and then we had a couple that tested positive for chlorpyrifos, but not in the levels we saw that in sort of the samples that had precipitated the study in the first place. So yeah, these could have been stored in a facility that was fumigated, or there's lots of ways these contaminations can reach the product. The cellulose papers, I would say, like, yeah, dude, if I was this is sort of a consumer safety issue, and these particular samples that we tested, I would not want to consume, certainly, and I wouldn't recommend people do. But yeah, like I said, the amount of cypermethrin, even in these blunt wraps that were well over the action limit in California, I don't think by the time you put cannabis in it, I mean, I don't know, I'm not an epidemiologist, but I wouldn't personally be overly concerned about this at myself as a consumer. But certainly as a manufacturer of pre-rolled products, I think it's just something, is something we identified as another, another input that manufacturers should be aware of is just another example of, you gotta check all your inputs, with the regulations we're working with.
Yeah, and if I may, real quick on that, and just to give a little more context, public service announcement less on like public health scare, but it was more sending out to all the clients that we work with in California as a source that has been kind of identified bringing in failures, 3,000 product batches, kind of final finished product in
3,000 pre-rolls or what have you. And so we're kind of putting it out more in like an insight to help kind of navigate and eliminate a potential fail, and that's what we do a lot of, because across all these tests, and I totally understand what you're saying, Mark, like there's such tiny action limits, but I would, be that as it may, we only see 1% to 2% fail rate across all compliance testing, so even as strict as these standards are, we've been
pretty fucking good, right?
Well, and now cannabis is being proudly touted as cleaner than food or cleaner than water. In most,
it is, right?
And so
we're just held at a different. We're held at a different level of scrutiny, and
how quickly we're able to do it.
We have to be. Have you guys ever done any non-cannabis testing other than these papers? Like, I was thinking more in terms of like, everyone was concerned with the vape pen manufacturing happening over in China, and that there could be lead and solder and components. Have you guys? So I take it you're doing this metal testing by ICP, which again is a really sophisticated test, right? I mean, you have to have the instrumentation and experts like Josh to run it, so it's not something trivial like you could run other kinds of tests. So.
Yeah, and if I may, I'd love Josh to kind of jump in, because we got to smoke.
I think he fell off.
No, he's right there. He's just on mute. But I just wanted to make a point about supply chain. Yeah, because what we find ourselves in this position where we're helping all those that we serve qualify their inputs beyond cannabis. Because cannabis is a massive phytoremediator, bioaccumulator on its own. But we're also helping them vet all these other supply chain sources that they're going to be adding something to cannabis, whether it's a rolling paper, whether it's raw cacao to make chocolates. We come to find out raw cacao is a phytoremediator of cadmium, and if it's grown around mountainous regions in the world like the Andes, then the percentage of cacao that you do a dark chocolate, the higher the chance that you're going to fail for a cannabis test because of the cadmium source of cacao, and same thing with qualifying essential oils, so it's almost like there's
don't forget the wrapper that you're wrapping that cannabis product in, all the packaging, everything that the product touches, right, has an analytical quality component that you guys and probably other labs too are just trying to get their hands around.
Yeah, and like putting live resin, super high terpene rich extracts into a jar and having a styrofoam insert kind of at the top that seals it down, and you see the terpene ring around it.
Probably not a good idea.
Oxide from the polyethylene plastic, and so there's all these sources, but I'll let Josh jump in on the heavy metal side, but it's really fascinating because we're just seeing these consumer trends of within kind of the testing market, of all these inputs that are other than cannabis. But I really see this like glimmer of hope that, the scrutiny that we're held to now is why can't food or every other industry qualify to these standards, especially when stoners are put to it, we are able to kind of make it with, 1% to 2% fail rate, even as strict as the standards are.
Hey, don't underestimate what a stoner could do with an HPLC.
And amen to that. I always say that food and, like when people are like, oh, cannabis shouldn't be regulated like this. I mean, look at our food. And I'm like, yeah, it's killing you like at an accelerated rate. Like the food is killing people right now, the water, the air quality. And I would just add before Josh says what he's going to say is that these Calyx containers are the first container that I actually saw taking into account the terpenes consuming the plastic.
Brilliant.
So this is like a, I don't know if it's PTFE or what it is, but he had told me originally this is basically non-consumed by terpenes. It's just a thin little layer and it fits right inside the cap. You can't even see it.
Wow.
And just boom, Calyx containers.
That's
pretty cool. Pretty cool little containers.
But holding all industries to a new standard that are going to come work with cannabis. And, I've never seen anything like that, Marcus. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Josh.
And I don't have too much to add other than you mentioned the vape cartridges. It just it's been a bit of a whack-a-mole as we at least with us in California as we've gone through the regulations. Just identifying a lot of things that people just didn't think about before anyone was kind of looking for the contaminants. So when we started doing heavy metal testing, that was one of the that was one of the sources of contamination that popped up right away. All of a sudden, we switched over to metals testing, and there weren't a lot of labs or a lot of customers that were that interested in doing metals testing before it was required. So it came as a bit of a surprise to everyone. And as soon as, kind of the regulations flipped, and if you're not from California, we sort of implemented our regulations in sort of a tiered fashion. And so the metals testing was sort of the last tier of testing that was required. And, immediately, all of a sudden, everyone realized that, the majority of vape cartridges on the market were failing for lead because, like you said, the manufacturers of the actual cartridges were using lead in the wicks, I believe. And but it was one of those things that is
solder too, right?
Yeah, yep, and solder, and that's a big source of contamination in a lot of manufacturing things. We were talking about papers earlier. Those are the type of places where lead enters. But
solder is defined by a certain percentage of lead, right? I'm not an electrical person, but I think that a solder is just an alloy of lead, tin, and a bunch of other stuff. So as soon as you hear solder, you're like, oh, yeah, test that shit for lead, right?
And if you're making any type of food grade equipment, you need to use special lead-free solder, and that's one of those things that often gets overlooked. And so, but then as soon as we were doing the testing, it took a matter of weeks to kind of spool up these factories to produce new cartridges using I guess a different solder formula. And I mean, it happened over Chinese New Year's, and most of these are produced in China, so there was a little bit of a delay because of the holiday. I remember that was stressful times, but within a matter of weeks, people were able to get cartridges that could pass back out on the market. And it just kind of goes to show that with a lot of these testing regulations, we do a lot of testing of organic produce, where you're talking about kind of what's in the food, in I guess with food, you have the choice of going organic, but even still, we test a lot of organic produce because we use, like lettuce or spinach as sort of blanks for some of our tests and things like that. And we have to purchase, and we're trying to get pesticide free. And that's really hard to do even with organics. Because just drift from other farms and whatnot, and just really hard to identify sources of contamination unless you're actually doing batch testing. And it just falls on the labs like us to to help guide that conversation and push for common sense regulation where testing doesn't become a burden, and people see it as sort of I guess one of the value adds of purchasing cannabis on the regulated market is that that there's a quality control that goes into it, there's testing that goes into it, and as long as we can keep doing that and not be too burdensome.
So Josh, here's a question I just love to ask, and you're probably one of the only people in the world who can answer this with having the knowledge and experience that you've had, which is that if there are lead components in the solder, and if the cannabis oil inside a vape cartridge comes in contact, is there, I mean, I understand chemistry at the molecular basis, but I don't really know, is there a sizable leaching of the lead into the cannabis oil? So now what you're vaporizing, there's lead inside the cartridge. Let's just, get over that fact. But what you're actually vaporizing, does that actually contain lead? And do you have data to say like how long the lifetime of an oil in a cartridge that contains lead should be? So like maybe they could just put an expiration date, so the longer, say like a cartridge sits around, the more lead leaches into the oil till it reaches a certain level.
Yeah, and it definitely leaches into the oil, because that's what we're testing for our our testing. And so when they were putting lead into these cartridges, that's where we were seeing it, is in the actual oil. And certainly the longer they sit, the more chance there is for that lead to leach. But lead isn't going to be soluble in the oil very well. What we saw more is the source of contamination is sort of how the cartridges were produced, because that was still early days of producing cartridges. I think at the time most people were still putting them together by hand, and so we would open up a cartridge and you would see in the oil, you would see like it looked like glitter, like little metal flecks, just from that whoever put that cartridge together used a little too much force, or just bad workmanship, and sort of metal was kind of flaking off into the material. So I think in general too, it was just kind of early on in the process and bad quality control, and that played a large part in it too. Is it just seemed how the cartridges were either assembled
Right, but even particulates won't vaporize, right? Like I'm thinking more of some type of soluble organometallic, like if there's THCA in there. I mean, obviously a carboxylic acid could form a metal salt. So if there's some lead oxide coating on the surface of, say, your solder, because a lot of times, a lot of these metals will form oxides because when they react with air, like Statue of Liberty is a perfect example, right? That green color in the Statue of Liberty, that's copper oxide because the oxide is basically corroded over the years, and basically the oxide is what's covering. So you could imagine that, yeah, THCA and other acidic components in cannabis oil extracts that go inside pen cartridges could now make a soluble metal complex. So now what's being vaporized, I'm not really so worried about all these metal particulates in there. I'd be more worried about some sort of lead THCA salt that's vaporized that I'm taking in my lungs, right?
Yeah. And we didn't we don't speciate, the metals, and mercury is a lot like that too. Mercury is, and it's not one we've seen in cartridges, but mercury is, mercury's volatile. But elemental mercury isn't as toxic as it's not the toxic species of mercury when compared to things like the organic species of mercury. So that all those dynamics all play a large part in it, and we don't have good data on the vapor. And we actually just recently we got a vaping robot essentially that where we can now vaporize these pens. You stick the pens in it. It has a little finger that can touch the button, and so you can play.
And that goes right into the GC.
We capture the vapor, and then we inject it right into the GC or the ICP. And so we first started kind of with the organics, but we're working right now with metals analysis of the vapor, and so that's actually something we've been working on. So maybe
I'd love to see you guys back up those findings from what Robert Strongin on degradation to what choline and benzene and all that. I think there's a lot of hand waving, about some of the degradation chemistry that happens on dabbing. I mean, those guys got a lot of PR out about that, and there's some studies, and I wanted to try to go reproduce that in my lab, but you need one of those cigarette smoking machines, which I just don't have. So,
Well, yeah. As soon as we're doing it to share the results, so we'll let you know what we find out. But that's actually our next project right now. So.
Yeah, I think that the funny, I wouldn't say the funny thing, but the ironic thing is that, again, people love vape pens. They just love the convenience of it and everything. And when COVID kind of came around, it was also one of those things where the whole communal aspect of cannabis use, passing a joint was just not happening anymore. Everyone was doing their own personal vaporizer, their own personal thing. And so, again, I get asked questions about this all the time. What about all these pen parts from China? Are they made in factories full of people with COVID? And another question I'm asked all the time that I don't know if you guys have any experience with, but can plant material be a vector for virus transfer? Do you know? Like if people are sick in a grow, can they contaminate plant material so that plant material is dangerous in a COVID kind of way?
As far as I know, that doesn't happen.
Okay.
And the virus on surfaces, I don't think there's any proof that it lasted longer than a few days.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's pretty well known. I think the way that people get this is by breathing the air that other people are breathing who are contaminated.
Or touching it with their hands and then rubbing their faces.
One thing I can tell you though is outdoor cannabis would have much less chance of transmitting COVID with all the UV exposure. So it's just another plug for outdoor cannabis.
Yeah. And so this would be a great group to ask this. Like I hope I saw some paper or somebody post something that I didn't look into, but I thought it was even just some fake news or something. But smoking cannabis had some effect in minimizing COVID exposure. Is that totally BS?
Oh, there's a couple studies. There's people who are really sinking their teeth in. There's a group up in British Columbia, up by Marcus, that published that CBD does seem to inhibit the enzyme that required for COVID to take hold in the body. That's just sort of like a layman's way of describing it. But there's a couple groups that, are now showing. It was interesting on last Hash Church, when we had it last time, and the very same question was asked. There was a YouTube published by an Israeli guy who had no data whatsoever to say that it's effective to treat or prevent COVID. But since then, there's been a lot of people looking at it. The alternative cannabinoids as well, CBG and CBD too as well. So a lot of people
shout out to Arjun from Strain Hunters. He's rocking some COVID-19 right now. He's been, I think he's in day 9 or 10. He's been doing updates on his Instagram, doing the sort of healthy walk in the forest in the morning, stay away from people, but saying he's getting real tired. And I guess yesterday it said that he kind of had a turn for the worse and was feeling pretty bad. So send positive vibes to Arjun.
Yeah, the famous grower Rob Carney, who is from Crested Butte, Colorado, who's known for the puck and known for hash plant and some few other things. He successfully, knock on wood, had COVID and was successfully treated. He was on the respirator. A lot of us thought we never going to see him again, but he pulled through. Unfortunately, I'm starting to learn of more and more people that I know that weren't so lucky.
Well, we'll wish him the best. And anyone else, I haven't.
Wear your mask.
I haven't really met a ton of people or know a ton of people that are cannabis, daily inhalers that have gotten it. I've only heard of maybe a few, and the ones that didn't seem to have very bad symptoms.
Maybe there's something to that.
I don't know. Someone asked me, I think it was Mark McCoy actually from VripTech asked me, and I had to think about it and was like, no, come to think about it, no. I guess I'll ask that question to all of you. Do you guys know any daily inhalers that have been negatively affected by COVID-19?
No.
Other than Rob. No.
Mark McCoy. Pick up Mark McCoy.
The people I know a guy who passed, but he already had COPD, so he already had lung issues. But I guess was more susceptible to it.
Time for a dab. It's almost done. We've got about 14 minutes left. Thank you all again for coming. And
in the last 20 years, I've only gotten the flu once or twice for a day or two at the most. And my wife always said it was because I smoked so much.
For sure it is. There's no doubt about it. I can't believe you didn't get the plague when we were all in Barcelona together. Every single person in that apartment but you got the plague.
Well, even I didn't feel great for about one day.
Dude, did your wife not end up in the hospital with that?
Yes, and you seemed like you wanted to go to the hospital.
Oh my God, I was so sick, man. And that went on for weeks when I got home. I've never felt anything like it. It was beyond horrible. That was the plague.
People too close, and the ultimate is sharing pipes.
Ooh, I know. I think I got it at that huge party at that palace that Advanced Nutrients threw. I'm not sure if you went there, but
no, I went there with you.
Oh yeah, of course you did. We were there. Okay, so that's where I think I picked it up.
We saw his miceness fairly early in the evening.
That is
upstairs.
Correct. We did. That's true. We did. That was a huge palace, though. I'll tell you what. That was.
Yeah, he knows how to waste money.
Oh my God. Oh, geez. I guess if you got it, I don't know. Not really. Fuck that. Go to the palace, get the plague. There's a story in there for you if you didn't catch it. Don't be hypnotized by great wealth. It's going to lead you to early death.
But you'll be buried well.
I'm being
Yeah, you'll be buried so well.
So beautiful and
Still naked, but
golden caskets for everyone. Gem encrusted. How about that? What a waste.
Right?
How about feeding people that are starving? That would be a good start. I mean, I don't know. Like,
no, donate your body to science so we can study you.
Dude, I have been donating my body to science for like the last 48 years. I feel.
Why let it end at your death?
Yeah, exactly. It's been my whole life.
I think, you know, cannabis has never been more important than in this time of COVID, right?
Couldn't agree more.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like it's on its way from, you know, I mean, just in such like, just like miraculous, like serendipitous timing, just shifting from felony to public essential service, you know, in this time of COVID. I mean, everybody would have just been wiped out, you know, that's been just working to, you know, build. And, you know, and so I can't help but to feel, you know, through this time of COVID and as the economic impact really is felt nationally, you know, I feel like cannabis and hemp is going to be quickly progress to strategic national global resource, you know, in a huge way. And on that, I'm sorry.
I said homegrown. People are going to grow more. People are going to grow a lot more cannabis now. I believe there's going to be a lot more growing at home and around the world. It's going to be a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I feel like the apocalypse is a beautiful thing. It's not, you know, everybody's freaking out that everybody's freaking out like we're in the apocalypse, like it's all hell, you know, kind of, you know, doomsday fire. And although we're in a deep state of suffering in this earth and just everything that's happening and the amount of immense human suffering is overwhelming, I just I can't help but to feel, you know, the root of the word apocalypse means the time of revelation or the great unveiling. And fuck, it seems like we're in that time, you know, just faith in institutions, faith in all trust, you know, all gurus, everything, everybody's a perp, everybody, you know, all this stuff, you know, is happening. And as a result, you know, I feel like, you know, in this time of revelation, I feel like cannabis and hemp are almost the leading horsemen of this apocalypse, you know, and you know, the more we can embrace and engage the plant, the more it can help give us the tools, you know, to alleviate suffering and to lead in this new time of revelation and to this shifting of times. And then, you know, leading the charge for all the other plant superheroes that are, you know, the other horsemen.
Yeah, well said, Alec, for sure. I'm in full agreement. I love the shift that's been happening slowly but surely with mainstream and alcohol consumption. And, you know, people are understanding now that alcohol consumption during these times, as well as really any times, it's just not noticeable. People become hypnotized by it, particularly people who are abusing it on a high level. They don't realize how foggy they're getting. They don't realize how they're just vibing at a lower frequency, how it just brings them down and creates depression. And it's not the party that it seems to be.
Right.
And you can see so many people in quarantine, like for 5-6 months, and drinking more and getting into fights and beating wives and beating kids. And slowly but surely, I see this shift where people are like acknowledging this drug and what it does and how it'll take everything from you if you allow it. And that it's, you know, potentially poison. Based on the amount of deaths. Yeah. Based on the amount of deaths annually that it produces, it's probably one of the most dangerous drugs on the planet. It's incredible how mainstream it is. So now people shifting into, maybe I'll try some cannabis, and not only like unraveling the lie that is alcohol, but now unraveling the lie that is cannabis and realizing in this shift, wow, like I've had enough of that. And I'm looking forward to a little bit more of this.
Yes.
Hey, I hate to be the voice of dissension, but I just started drinking, and I actually think it's quite an interesting drug. You know, I practice makes perfect. I'm not good at it or anything, but yeah, I really haven't ever been a drinker.
The difference between a drug and a medicine is dose, right? Or a poison and a medicine.
Intention.
Yeah.
Alcohol is not a medicine. Alcohol is a solvent.
No.
Yeah, you know what? I mostly get my views on it from growing up in an incubator of alcoholism in my city and the way people abused it. And that, you know, my mother working at 911 and me asking her, hey, what percentage of calls are 911 related? And her saying, oh, you know, probably between like 80 and 85, and my sister chiming in going, come on, mom, it's got to be 90, because she also works there. And I'm thinking like, wow, like 80 to 90% of the calls that go into the police are alcohol related. Like that is a huge, like serious tear on the social fabric, like the cost of that alone. And then I start thinking, it must be the equivalent at the hospitals. Like there must be such a huge percentage of people that are ending up at the hospitals through whether, you know, car accidents because people are drunk, or fights, or this, that, and the other thing. And it just sort of started to blow my mind at the cost of this particular drug that just seems to cause so much pain and anguish. And I think from an extractor perspective, I think of like, yeah, like Mark said, it's a solvent. What it does is it extracts the essence of things. And you can see people who have abused it over the course of 30 or 40 years have had their essence extracted. You know, it just won't take that medicine from the plant. It seems to do it from people too, at least from my limited perspective. I don't feel that way about people who seem to have a relationship with it where they can actually just drink a glass of it and have quite an enjoyment. It's more the people that seem to be out of control from it that just, they tend to fall into the hook where they hang out with people who can enjoy alcohol without having a problem. And then they're, you know, it doesn't work out that way for them. But that's just my perspective.
Well, it used to be medicine, you know, so did tobacco. I mean, there was a relationship to it that I think the problems are endemic. So they're social as well, cultural, they're and deeply emotional. So those are the deeper issues where we blame the drug and we name and blame the drug. Because I'm sort of like feel like that's what is, some drugs are bad, you know. And
it seems like the immunity defense, though, it goes down so far with alcohol use that besides the addictive tendencies and the social repercussion, that just personally, just my opinion, but it seems like watching now this day more than ever, people got to keep their immune defense high. And alcohol, I know if I ever had more than one, I haven't drank for, you know, 15, 16 months straight, just quit over a year ago. But I know back then even it would lower my immunity and I wouldn't even feel whole. I wouldn't feel, you know, healthy or well, even if I was living well otherwise. So I just feel like it's the immunity defense hit that it takes. That's too much risk these days, you know.
So you guys are trying to talk me out of drinking, huh?
Yeah.
I think no, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna just I want to say that I think we blame the drug. There's, you know, walking in the smoke and living in it now, it takes an immune hit. And I'm not disagreeing with you that our bodies do react to negative input. It has dark qualities, but really it doesn't. It's we that possess the dark qualities. And then we
understood,
you know, that we engage them. And instead, you know, we're not attending the church of consciousness enough, you know, of awareness, of communicating that between and with one another, listening to one another, because we always have something to say. Like I'm saying something right now myself, but I just mean, I think we have an opportunity to dismiss the blame around the items and put it more directly where, sorry about my phone here, to place it more, take personal responsibility to address our frailties as human beings, and to recognize the frailties in one another without blame or judgment, and which is super hard to do. I'm not saying I don't judge. I'm a big judger. And, you know, I think you know, I have a big ego, and you know, I'm trying to tame it. Maybe by the time I really am 100, it'll be a little more under control, but I'm just saying. So I found it was kind of surprising to me that, wow, I'm like, this alcohol is, this is interesting. But, you know, it's not, I really think one of the most important things that this isolation, or this period of isolation for me, is the way that I'm absolutely stuck with myself. You know, it's just so obvious to be with me that everything is magnified. It's bigger. It's, oh, I'm the only one in the room. What the hell? what the hell's going
You
on?
You started drinking during this COVID shutdown thing, and
Well, I mean, wait, I started drinking. I don't. As a matter of fact, I'm drunk now. It's why I don't have that's why I dropped my computer. No, I'm just saying I never really have been a drinker. And so actually, yeah, I was more speaking I was more speaking to alcohol having been a medicine, and that we take things to a place where we devalue them. And while I didn't say that, I think that's true, that we put a spin on the things around us, when really it's our spin. It's what's happening within us that leads us to become abusive to others and abuse ourselves. And if we're abusing ourselves and our bodies are temples, this magical, exquisite 50 trillion cell piece of magnificence and miraculous or magical manifestation, then then we take that to others. So I'm just saying it's not the alcohol. And
I think it's tough to divorce alcohol from all the baggage though that comes along with it. And so I'm just glad that now, with cannabis and like Alex said, maybe some other plant medicines, we're having other options, because from my perspective, alcohol is one of the heaviest drugs out there, and I've tried most of them. And and for it to be kind of the only option we had for so long,
well, that
doesn't seem like a wise choice, because there's a lot of baggage that comes with it. Maybe if you could take that all away and experience it like you're experiencing it, kind of for the first time, then, and you could do it without all that stuff, I could see where maybe there would be some benefit to alcohol. But
and drugs, there's speed, there's there go ahead. Well, anyway, go ahead, Alex.
Well, Val, and you, that you're tribute to the Queen. You're also like one of the highest level like wizard, like Jedis I know in my life that has worked with medicines of all sorts and types. And so, you are also coming to it with a very, a realized, aware perspective. And to, kind of on that botany of desire level, kind of how much these certain plants that built empires and kind of industry, and how much human suffering and violence and just personal destruction and just all that it led to. I feel like, again though, it's like that's, I feel like that's where these other plants are coming in, and all the work that you've done and we are doing with cannabis and helping to raise this vibration to 420, because now that, like, we know this plant, and we have this love and reverence for this plant, and the work we're doing with it is now helping to spiritually forklift so many of our friends and family that are in these states of pure abuse and suffering, and use of alcohol as the only medicine, or in their case pure poison to further destroy their life. Whereas kind of we know these other plants are available to expand our repertoire, in our medicine portfolio, because it's like poisons and medicines, and it's like, what do you choose to imbibe in? And kind of cannabis, where we see this benefit and we are bringing this benefit out to the world. And I feel like we need to be the spiritual and psychedelic astronauts that we are, to continue that, kind of leveling up to 720 and beyond, to help bring these other medicines that are so needed in this moment of suffering, like ayahuasca, peyote, all these, indigenous rites of passage and traditions that are, purposefully their purpose is to help heal and alleviate the trauma and suffering of the past and your ancestry. And so it's like alcohol is not going to do that, but starting to work with other plants, can get you to a point, I feel, in life where you can, kind of not over leverage one plant or poison ally that you have in your life over another, but to really just have reverence for the plants and for what you put in your body. And that in fact, your body is the temple.
Yeah, that's the reverence point. And actually it's quite interesting, because I've noted many times, and learned this really from primarily time repeated, that people with neuropathic pain, it's extremely difficult to minimize neuropathic pain. It's quite difficult, and it's hard to get ahead of it without being really drugged. And some very interesting pieces of information whereby delivered to me through patients who are allergic to opiates, which can complicate the problem, because you can often use cannabis with other drugs to step away from the pain, and then once you're out of the suffering's out of the pain, you can deal with the pain, but the suffering is what overwhelms. And many folks have told me that applying or adding a small amount of alcohol really helps to minimize that. So when you leave, I think what we villainize the things around us, and not to, I mean, I've known a lot of drunks that have driven me crazy. As a matter of fact, I had to ask somebody to leave this place because, really couldn't, the behavior surrounding alcohol abuse was, too much for me. So whatever, that's, it's the way that we, it's just a personal responsibility, and, whether or not people can manage to look at ourselves, it's not no small task. Right. So, and I like to play, I don't know if it's the devil's advocate, but I like to stand on the side where where nobody's standing, because I do think alcohol has value, and I've seen it work and have recommended it to people, like, have you tried a drink, because the pain is so pervasive and minimizes life. It minimizes suffering, takes the joy, the pleasure out of life, and it is so difficult to use pain to transcend as a transcendent tool. It can be, and I've had the experience twice in my life, once with cannabis and pain, and once with an extreme amount of pain, to be able to, only twice, and I'm old and had a lot of pain, so like, I feel like only 2 times could I ride the pain to another expression or experience. Now, neither of those was with alcohol, to be honest. This is more of a new trend. So, I just think that we have a tendency to, I don't know what y'all are doing, but I have a tendency to look at the object, and whether it's the object of desire or repulsion, it's still the object, and it's not really the point, right? It's not really the point, is it? So.
Well said, Valerie. Absolutely agree with all that you said there. And I just happen to sit on the other side of the fence, where I'm more like, I see Christianity going into every culture and ripping out their plant sacraments and replacing it with their sacrament, wine, the blood of Christ, alcohol. And I see what alcohol seems to have done to indigenous populations around the world. And I just have such a hard time accepting it as, I'm not saying get rid of alcohol forever by any means. I just think that it's so pervasive and it's so promoted, and people seem to not even know how to gather without having it around, and become so dependent on it. It causes so much pain that I don't know how to remove that. I mean, I get that there's root causes of everyone's pain rooted in trauma that they've had probably as a child. And of course, if we all looked inside of one another, et cetera, I get all that. But at the same time, I think maybe life would just be a little bit better if that shit wasn't available on every single street corner in every single city. It's just so pervasive.
Yeah. Used as a tool of oppression, sure.
Alcohol is part of Canadian culture, right? I mean, during Prohibition here in the US, a lot of booze came in from Canada. So there was a supply chain that was created. And the thing that always bothers me, especially when they make the comparison to our industry, cannabis, is how double standard it is, like with advertising and everything, and how alcohol consumption is glorified around sporting things, and just the whole alcohol culture and alcohol mentality of consumption, and the behavior that supposedly, hey, if I drink a Coors Light, I'm going to have all these scantily clad women around the pool with me, and ooh, that's cool. Yet, cannabis can't even get, a commercial during the Super Bowl. I mean, it's.
Well, wait a minute. When it does, it will have the scantily clad women. That's what's already happening.
Don't know about that.
That's not far. I still.
No, if you looked at Acreage did have a commercial that they paid a big ad agency already to sort of pitch to do Super Bowl advertising, and they were shot down by the network. But the point is that, there's such an unfair landscape in between the glorification of alcohol consumption and what they've done to demonize cannabis consumption. And I think there, to me, Marcus, I don't know if this is the way you feel, again, being Canadian. I mean, I just feel that, man, there's too much alcohol. We don't need more people drinking alcohol. I love a craft beer, and I certainly love my single malt scotch, but you know what? I'll abstain from alcohol use if it means making cannabis use fully legal and accessible to everybody.
Well, I'm certainly not a prohibitionist, and I certainly wasn't saying prohibit alcohol. I was just saying don't make it available on every single street corner, like everywhere, just like booze, booze, booze. Don't let like it seems to have a fairly low LD50 number, and yet it just is in everyone's house without being protected. It's just like there's little babies and little toddlers, and I've got enough alcohol here to kill like 5 children.
Our thing doesn't even have an LD50 mark, right?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying.
Well, it is one of the matrix tools, you know. I mean, just like the amount of, I mean, you know, to me, what's just so fucked is just this like cycle of almost just drone-ness that happens from the food system poisoning us and the reliance on the pharmaceuticals that then drone us out further, and then it turns out that Monsanto and Bayer are owned by the same people, you know, making the poisons that are glyphosate killing our microbiome, and then, you know, kind of Bayer selling the, you know, pharmaceuticals to make us better, and then, you know, and then the recreational drug of choice is then tobacco, you know, as well as alcohol. And tobacco, you know, the way tobacco is used is one of the greatest crimes against humanity. You know, they call it the red man's curse. You know, and it's taken this one of the greatest, most preyed upon sacraments and herbs to use in a specific way to pray and to amplify your prayer out into the universe. And we took it and we completely raped it, sprayed it with all the poisons and chemicals, you know, of World War II and kind of death and pesticides and poison, and created an industry around smoking as you stress on life and taking smoke breaks and amplify. And you don't use the tobacco in the way that is supposed to be used. You use it in a way to amplify the destructive power of tobacco into your body. And so it's like, you know, between the way tobacco and alcohol have been fetishized, you know, for our, you know, kind of as the alleviators of stress and the tools for us to, you know, chill out after a hard day at work. You know, I think those combined with the food system that's poisoned is just one of the greatest crimes against humanity, and this matrix droneness that's led to kind of so much of the suffering. And that's where, yeah, I feel like, and I agree with you, Marcus, you know, cannabis, you know, I mean, in so many ways, it's like, that's, you know, it's the, leveler up in that way. And I feel like bringing up the frequency and the vibration and the level of suffering and healing, and so, you know, bring it down, and then it brings way for the other plants. But it's a trip, because, you know, tobacco is the same way. It's been used in such a profoundly dishonest or disrespectful way, and way that, you know, I mean, tobacco hasn't killed kind of the people in the way, I mean, the way it's used in Hape in Brazil, the tobacco snuffs that's used, the way Mapacho and North American, South American, you know, indigenous tradition, it's like very, very different plant.
I think that it won't be too long before we see cannabis advertised in the way that both, well, tobacco less, of course, now, but alcohol, the way that it's advertised, and the kind of relationship that's created by a corporate infrastructure that supports this a specific type of advertising. It's to reach as many people, to sell as much product. And so as long as we, I think, as long as we are not self-reflective and not looking at productizing, marketing, what is it that we're selling? So, I mean, I think that's obviously that's what happened with alcohol. And I mean, I don't know, I don't smoke cigarettes, but, you know, I smoke pot. And so I mean, I just think that I'm not going to say that I haven't known some bad drunks, because I certainly have, and never seemed to that doesn't seem so attractive to me. But I really question the way that we look at the world around us, and the way that we engage with the things that we do. I'm a we, but me, you know, the way I do, the way I look at myself and what I buy and how it is sold to me. And I see cannabis as very paralleling alcohol. And very soon, you know, the next big, what is it that what game were we just played? What game was supposed to have been played that this, was it the Super Bowl? Is that what you were saying, Mark?
Super Bowl, yeah.
Yeah, Super Bowl. Sorry, I'm not a sports guy, but you know, it's just we have to take responsibility, but we also have to call out responsibility on the marketing, the way that cannabis is being marketed, and the way it's being absconded, and the viewpoint. You know, I mean, if you open a magazine and look at cannabis, the way it's sold is very much the way that alcohol is sold. And that's, so, you know, kind of getting less and less. I mean, we're seeing different kinds of marketing occurring, but you know, I guess the question is really, what do we want to sell, and what do we want to buy, and who do we buy it from? You know, I have a much bigger, you know, I want to make Amazon, I want a prohibition for Amazon. You know, to me, that's the dark side. It's not what you drink. It's where does it come from? Who makes it? How do they make it? Who suffers because of it? And what is the service that's being done? Are we serving ourselves, our planet, the people that we work with? Are we serving, what do we serve? And the people and who do we serve? So right now, a lot of us serve Amazon, and we serve a very dark mission, and to save, I don't know, $1 or $5 or 1,000 or whatever. So, and there are other ways to do it, and all of it is linked. And you guys are right. I mean, I'm gonna bust out my bottle in a second. Now, that's why you can't see me. I'm totally kidding. So I just think there's so many really big questions, and it's all linked. It's all linked to just everything. It's the mycorrhizome. We're talking about it right here. But how does that extend to every single thing that we take in, everything that we do, our actions, every puff we take, every breath we breathe, every word we speak? You know, does it improve upon the silence? So yeah, my alcohol rap.
Appreciate it. Really appreciate the conversation completely today, on every level. We talked about some good things. It got me excited to be here for another episode of Hash Church. We did go over a little bit, only 16 minutes. I just wanted to do it till noon today, but everyone that came, everyone that's here, Mr. Skunkman Sam and Johnny B and Best Friend Farms Brian and Josh and Alec from SC Labs and Valerie Corral, thank you all so much. Also saying thanks to Colin and Etienne and Peter and Debbie and the Dragonfly Earth Medicine and Soma. Whew, can't believe I remembered all that. That was pretty good, actually. Thank you all for coming and sharing in the topic that we all love so much about the plant and the resins that we all love so much, and even expanding into other things. I know that the people watching today definitely enjoyed the show. I've been keeping my eye on the chat all day. I think we had 300 or 400 people in there for most of the time. So I hope to do another one soon. And in the meantime, just keep being you, be safe, be well, and may the full melt bless your bowls sooner, if not than later.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you for doing this,
Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
Wow. Oh, wait.
Everybody,
Puffable, guys.
Possible.
that was fun.